NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender. Woo!
Tax season is here, which means you've received or are expecting that tax refund any day now, and you're thinking about what to spend it on. How about a new home? With SaveWithConrad.com, we're helping renters become homeowners every single day, and it's more affordable than you think. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need a huge down payment. In fact, you may not need a down payment at all. At SaveWithConrad.com, we take the stress out of the home buying process. We'll determine your buying power. We'll even help you find a realtor. And unlike the banks, we don't say no. We say not yet, but here's how. So if you're not ready right now, we'll get you on a plan to be ready. Stop throwing your money away, paying someone else's mortgage with your rent, and start the path towards owning your own home today at SaveWithConrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Foley Is Pod. And of course, we have another exciting show in store for you today with some stuff you've probably never heard before. We've been lucky enough to host Mick Foley a couple of times at Starcast over the years. We had him at Starcast 3 in Chicago back in 2019. That's when CM Punk first came back to wrestling. But one of the personal highlights for me of that entire weekend is not just getting CM Punk back in and around the business, but getting Mick Foley on stage to tell his story and do his show as only he can. You've heard Mick reference his live show quite a bit. Of course, he comes out every few years with a new version of it. Some new stories, some new information, some new twists, some new laughs. And we're going to take a visit back to August of 2019, Starrcast weekend, Labor Day weekend, where we're lucky enough to have Mick Foley on stage. And then we'll wrap it up with Mick Foley this past year at Starrcast 5. We were in Nashville, and we wanted to talk a little old school Mick Foley stories. And we have two separate Mick Foley stage shows here for you. Now, if you had been with us in Chicago or in Nashville, you may have seen these. Or you could be watching these panels and a whole lot more. As a matter of fact, every Starrcast panel as a part of adfreeshows.com. You get all of our shows early and ad-free over there, and we, of course, crank out bonus content from every show every month, and, of course, all the great series like The Book and Title Chase and so much more. But all of our Starrcast panels, they, too, are posted over at adfreeshows.com. Without further ado, man, let's get to it. If you've never seen Mick Foley live, if you've never heard him live, here's your chance. Mick doing what he does best, entertaining folks at Starrcast 3 here in Chicago. 2019. Let's do it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for joining me in this coveted 10 a.m. spot. I try to see the glass half full. I said 10 a.m. and I'm competing with DDP Yoga Workshop, and I have the honor of doing my meet and greet while Punk's show is going on. And this, Jesus, man, the place can be packed. But like I said, try to see the glass half full. And one of the problems I have when I do my shows occasionally is I don't get hecklers. I get exuberant fans trying to impress me by shouting out the endings of my stories, right? And I understand it's coming from a good place, right? Like they want me to know how much they know about me, not realizing it kind of messes with the timing of the stories. And so I remember when I was doing a tour of the Pacific Northwest in Canada, and in the fall a few years ago, and I was going over ticket sales about a week before the show, and the woman was telling me, okay, you got 220 for Calgary. I said, okay, that's good. 230 for Edmonton. All right, a week out, that's good. You got 150 in Medicine Hat. I said, okay, that's looking good. You got 5 in Revelstoke. I said, what did you just say? Did you say we had 5 tickets sold in Revelstoke? So apparently it was a skiing community in the fall, so it was like a ghost town with nobody there. But they booked me in a 2,300-seat theater. So by the time showtime arrived, we had sold 23 tickets. We placed the 23 seats in a fan shape with me, with my back turned to the 2,300 seats behind me. And as I start the show, I'm thinking to myself, glass half full, at least nobody's going to heckle me. And as I went to say my first words, I was proven wrong. I hear the voice of an old man going, "What are you going to do about Stephanie and Triple H?" And I just looked at him. I said, "What did you say?" He said, "I don't like what they do to Monday Night Raw." I thought, you've got to be kidding me, right? So, but anyway, this is cool. We'll make you guys. I know there's a sign there about platinum stuff, but come on over, fill in the gaps there, right? Come on, we're on TV. All right. Nobody's going to complain, right? Yeah, okay. And listen, this may sound like a strange way to start a show, but yesterday was the 20th anniversary of the Rock and Sock connection. And I think I speak for The Rock when I say neither one of us knew that this was going to be anything. Wrestling in large part, especially during the Monday Night Raws, was an exercise in just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping some of it stuck. And neither one of us thought that was going to stand the test of time. But it is a distant second, but still very much second place, the thing I'm asked about most often, second most often, behind that cell match is the Rock and Sock connection. This was 20 years ago yesterday. Lesser known, but equally important to me is that something that took place 23 years ago today. I was fairly new in WWE, and I was riding the roads with a certified legend in our business, and he was a very religious man, and I kind of needed that in my life at the time, never more so than when my wife called me and told me some sad news. We were living in the Atlanta, Georgia area at the time. We were experiencing quite a heat wave, and we had a landscaper who helped us out and did a lot of jobs, odd jobs around the house for us. And he had a son who'd been brought into the world under difficult circumstances, not enough oxygen delivered to his brain, so he was challenged both mentally and physically. And their small trailer outside of Atlanta had experienced a power outage, and the child had gone into convulsions. And the question my wife had for me was, could we give them $400 to purchase an air conditioner? Now, I don't know if you've heard these rumors out there regarding my thriftiness. I assure you some of them are true. Oh, they're damn true. And I was just getting going with WWE, like $400. That was a lot of money to me. That's still a lot of money to me. And so I didn't know what to do, so I turned to this religious, legendary figure, and I asked him for his advice. And you know how sometimes people can talk for hours on end, and you have no idea what's actually been said. They're like talking without actually saying anything worth listening to, right? And when I asked this legendary figure what I should do, he said so much with just one word. He just put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Pray." The next day, this man asked me what I had decided to do, and I told him that we had purchased the air conditioner. And this time he said even more with no words at all. He just put his hand on my knee, he bowed his head, and he walked away in silence, leaving me to know beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is the wisest, kindest man in our business. That was about 6 p.m., 8 hours later, a lonely motel room in the outskirts of Detroit, the wisest, kindest man I'd ever met urinated all over me. And I thought back to dinner that evening when I was surprised when my friend, he had ordered a beer with dinner, and that was unusual because he'd had his battles with demons, and I didn't think he was supposed to be drinking, but I lacked the courage, the intestinal fortitude to bring up this subject to him. But that didn't stop a patron in the restaurant from coming up and saying, Excuse me, Mr. Roberts. Oh, now we can put a face to the name, a name to the face, right? I didn't think you were supposed to be drinking. And Jake the Snake looked at that woman dead in the eyes and said, ma'am, the Lord has given me the strength to have just one beer. That's good. The Lord doesn't give that strength to just anybody. And it's amazing the way your mind can work in moments of trauma, right? Like during the cell match, you know? Even when I was outside and the crowd was chanting like, Undertaker, you know, with the clapping like, Undertaker, Undertaker, Undertaker. I can vividly recall thinking to myself, he went like this. Maybe they're cheering for the wrong guy. And when I lost my ear in Munich, Germany, you know, here's this traumatic situation. I've just lost a body part, and I can hear the pitter-pattering of the bright red blood drops on the bright blue Wow, I'm having trouble, man. Sorry, it's a 10 a.m. start. Bright blue protective mats, and couldn't help but think how similar the song Listen to the Rhythm of the Falling Rain sounded to Ricky the Dragon Steamboat's entrance music. I swear to you, that's what I was thinking, because one of them went, listen to the rhythm of the falling rain. And the other one went, loves his wife and kids and does the best he can. Ricky Steamboat the Dragon. Which, by the way, with all due respect to The Undertaker, that's some badass entrance music, man. Am I right? I mean, I remember it was like when you'd hear that gong sound and I'd get the hairs on my forearm standing up every night. Nothing compared to that music and those words. You'd be out there ready to do battle and you'd hear those words. You'd be like, what? He does the best he can? He loves his wife and kid? I didn't sign up for this, man. But that's the way I felt when I was in that hotel room being urinated on. Because I'm realizing it's leaving his body like 18 inches from mine. But it's arriving on me in ice-cold, frigid conditions, leading me to believe that either Jake the Snake Roberts truly is reptilian in nature, or he's got some type of cross-brewed microfiltration system hooked up to his balls. And then the other thing, I swear to you, as I was being urinated on in ice-cold fashion, I was thinking to myself, I'm pretty sure he had more than just that one beer. But I wanted to talk about Jake because if you have the chance to see the movie, The Peanut Butter Falcon, take advantage of it. See it on the big screen. It's got like 97% Rotten Tomatoes, 98% moviegoers, and Jake is just phenomenal. And I was talking with a couple of guys. I was talking with Mark Madden and Mr. Hudson, which is my way of saying I can't remember his first name. Backstage, and I was saying, I met with these guys 5 years earlier, and they handed me the script, but I thought the script was good. But I thought there's no way this movie will ever get made because there's no way you can make an audience believe that some guy in his late 50s, early 60s would rather keep his spot as a backyard wrestling champion rather than make a young man with Down syndrome live out his dreams and look good in his first and only wrestling match. And when I got on that set in Savannah, Georgia, 2 summers ago, like 110 degrees out there, scorching, blazing sun. And even as I'm watching Jake Roberts, I'm thinking to myself, he's doing it. Go see it, and Jake the Snake will make you believe in the evil that dwells within the heart of man. He's so good. He browbeats the kid. He stiffs him. He doesn't sell for him. And then there's a payoff, like you'll get goosebumps. And one of the cool things for me is I went on a little midday show. There's only about 20 people in that audience. And I was turning around when I would hear them laugh, you know, and here comes a scene, and I could hear them wiping away, literally hear them wiping away tears and the sad parts. And one of the coolest, most fulfilling things for me is I'm the referee / owner / promoter of Jacob's Inferno, this little backyard wrestling organization, and I'm like calling out the matches on a bullhorn, megaphone. And they made sure that they caught me from the right angle, you know? And I'm up there, my face is like 18 feet high, and I hear a complete and total stranger go, "What happened to his ear?" And that filled me with an inner sense of joy. So, all right. Listen, man, I don't know how many of you saw the 20 Years of Hell tour. Yeah? 6 of you. Everyone not wearing a Young Buck shirt has seen my show, which is 6 of you. The guy with the scarf, huh? You didn't see the show, did you? Okay, we're going to have a little problem, me and you. You know why? I was doing this interview with the Sporting News, right? Promoting this event, and this is a fabulous event. I said how cool it was. The same guy that used to hitchhike hundreds of miles or take trains all by himself to see the things that I wanted to see can now just open his hotel room door and walk down a hallway and see the panels. So I've been enjoying the heck out of it. Really looking forward to it, and I hope they have an amazing night tonight, and it's a weekend you guys will all long remember. But the Sporting News guy said, "Hey, was there any pushback on you for doing this show?" I said, not that I know of. And he said, "Really?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I don't have a phone. I have no way of knowing if anybody's angry at me." "Why?" He goes, "I think it'd be pretty contentious." I said, "Holy crap, you know what?" I said, "What am I going to do? I'm just going to show up and I'll just pander to the live crowd, right? I'll get through this thing." And then I find out it's on live television. So I'm sorry, but the only way I can do this is by taking a very strong pro-WWE approach. And I know it's gonna upset some of you, but when it comes to the Wednesday Night War, let's be honest. AEW versus WWE is like shooting spitballs at a battleship. All right, I don't want to hurt your feelings. You're talking about Vince McMahon here. He doesn't lose. When he puts his mind to something, it succeeds. That's why IcoPro is the #1 nutritional supplement company. The World Bodybuilding Federation is the greatest bodybuilding federation in the history of bodybuilding federations. And the XFL is going to take off like a rocket. Yeah. So let's make sure that's the, all right, we guys zoomed in on me? All right. Well, let me get this quote, all right? WWE is going to crush you guys. All right, now we're cool. Okay, all right. All right, thank you. But I'm a little worried because if you saw the 20 Years of Hell tour and it was televised, like 20 years to the day in Pittsburgh, and an amazing atmosphere, and I was telling stories that I'd been working on specifically for that show, like just working on them for 20 straight shows, and it's this really rewarding process. You go out there, you see what works, and you play to your strengths. You cut out the stuff that's not working, and so when you finally get it on camera, it's as tight and as good as it can be. And today I'm just kind of winging it. I've got a couple stories, a couple high spots, and the rest of it, we're just going to play it by ear. You guys will play a role here in the Q&A, all right? I just hope you have good questions lined up. You don't realize how valuable good questions are until you don't have them. And one of the great ironies I thought in wrestling is that people think of it as the phony sport and the fake sport, and I think you fake your injuries, right? And I've been asked this, like, you fake your injuries? I was like, actually, most of the time you are pretending not to be injured when you are, because the people who pay their hard-earned money don't want to hear that you dropped an elbow off the concrete and you're feeling it deep down in your bones. You owe it to that group of people to put on the best show that you possibly can. Am I right? But one of the things I'm worried about is I'm going to draw blanks up here. And I've just had flashbacks. I've had 2 or 3 times, man. One of them when I was the commissioner of WWF, right, in 2000. And this is when I started writing stuff down on my hand. because this was about the time you go back in wrestling history and you realize that as the commissioner, first time the commissioner had really taken a lead role, so much so that I replaced the legendary Shawn Michaels, maybe the greatest of all time, but I replaced him and he'd barely been on the show. Like, he actually came back to make an announcement that I was replacing him as commissioner. And now I've got to lead these 20-minute in-ring soliloquies, sometimes not just soliloquies, sometimes they're surrounded by a cast of up to a dozen people. And I remember my mother asking me, like, Mick, like, how many days in advance do you find out what you're going to say? And I said, days? And she said, well, how many hours? And I said, she goes, like, when do you find out? I said, Mom, there's sometimes when the pyro's going off, and I still don't know what we're going to say. But it was just like this enormous adrenaline rush. Like, I remember, like, this was me. I'd be writing down 3 or 4 words, and the pyro's going off. On one specific occasion, Mr. McMahon walked over to Chris Jericho, and he goes, now, Chris, don't forget when you're out there to call Stephanie a bottom-feeding trash bag hoe bucket sleaze. I didn't say anything, but he just saw the expression on my face, and he goes, yes. I said, Vince, that's your daughter. And he puts his hand on my shoulder. He goes, you know, Mick, there's nothing I wouldn't do to get a pop in this business. And so on one occasion, right, I'm supposed to say something to bring the bad guys out, and I draw this blank, right? And I feel like I'm out there for minutes, even though in retrospect, when it played back, it looked like it was a dramatic pause. It was like 2 or 3 seconds, but in my head, I was this close to just going, you guys in the back might want to come out. I have no idea what I'm supposed to say. That's when it felt like it was minutes, but there was actually a time when I came back to WWE after being away for 3 years. I came back and I kind of lost my mojo. And this was at a time they were going to declare a new GM for SmackDown. And so Teddy Long came back, and people who'd done the job came back to, like, petition for that job once again. And I was given a script, and I read it for like 3 hours. That's not the way I used to do things. You know, I used to have points in my head, and I would just try to get into the, you know, like into the zone. So when out there, that stuff would come alive. But then this time, like, I was playing not to lose instead of playing to win. And there's a decided difference. And on that night in Baltimore, I went out and I drew the blank to end all blanks. Thank goodness it was a taped show, because I went a legitimate 89 seconds without saying a word. And I finally walked over to Marty, the cameraman, the one The Rock used to accuse of being a cross-dresser, without a shred of evidence. And I'm sorry, I respect The Rock, but that's not fair. And even if it was, we shouldn't care. Love is love is love, am I right? And I remember walking over to Marty, the cross-dressing cameraman, and I felt very much like I had when I was 8 years old and lost my yoo-hoo on a camp field trip. And I was doing that thing that John C. Reilly did in Step Brothers when he talked about the beating at the hands of Chris Gardocki on the playground being like Dorothy and the Tin Man being picked up by the winged monkey. You know what it is, right? And I was like, Marty, my voice was shaking. I was like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to say. And he hands me this script, and I take a look at it, and I come back, and I say, it's great to be right here in Baltimore, Maryland. Didn't even remember my own freaking catchphrase. Speaking of freaking catchphrases, all right? How many of you have been to panels? Well, we'll be on here this weekend. Nobody's been to a single panel? Yeah. All right, panel, like one of these things, all right? Okay. All right. All right, I love some of these guys, but let's face facts. DDP's a little loose and easy on the F-bombs, right? Guy needs 3 F-bombs to describe the birth of a fuzzy puppy. All right? I'm going to go this entire 90-minute period, right? 1 F-bomb. If you've ever been to one of my shows, that's the Foley rule, 1 F-bomb. Because I like to think of that word as my finishing maneuver, right? I may tease it a couple times. If I do it right, it comes out of nowhere. If I can get a standing ovation at 11 o'clock in the morning, we're already 30 minutes in. Oh, things are flying by. All right, thank you. then I will know something truly special. Young lady, would you like to be my designated F-bomb counter? All right, you just let me know if I've used it up or if I have one left in the tank, okay? And the cool thing is, like, I literally don't know how I'm going to use this F-bomb, okay? A lot of it will depend on those questions. Oh, the reason I brought up Ecuador to begin with is that when I got there, right, it's the craziest thing because they had security, like, in a circle around me. Like, I was like the Beatles at Shea Stadium in '64. Like, there were people everywhere. I was like, whoa, I never felt like such a big star in my life, taking photos everywhere I went. And now I sit down at my table, and not a blessed soul approaches to buy a single thing. But they were just so happy and content to be looking at me. It was weird. Like, I had never done so little selling in my life. I'd seen Al Snow sell more in hardcore matches. By the way, I'm wearing the Al Snow collar and elbow flannel there. So I just sold more for Al than he did for me in the entirety of his career. I will tell you one similarity between this show and the 20 Years of Hell tour is I was having a little fun at Al's expense. Al claimed that he was hit with a steel chair and he was out on his feet, and that's why he wasn't selling. But I was like, Al, you were in character. You were like laughing, and he's like, no, that's ridiculous. You made it a point not to sell this stuff because you thought it'd be good for your character. Then I started ribbing him, saying, hey, Al, we should team up as the sellers, best and no, right? Like, hey, I was in Hell in a Cell, and you're in no cell in a cell. And I said, I'm going to tell Undertaker. And Al Snow, with whom I enjoyed, 20 years of joking relationship, grabbed me and said, he looked me right in the eye. I said, no, please don't tell the Undertaker. And I took him at his word, because the one thing carrying over is you never, ever underestimate the power of the Undertaker. But now that Al's not here, I don't think so. Yeah. The sellers, best and no. Hell in a Cell, no cell in a cell. Okay, pretty good. All right. But when it came time in Ecuador, this was just last weekend, to do my Q&A, we had 600 people out there, like mobbed, right? And clearly they've got a guy here, because I don't actually speak I don't speak Spanish, I speak Santa Spanish. Like, I can recite things that Santa would say. And I recite the same 5 lines verbatim to every Spanish-speaking family I meet, and they all walk away thinking, Santa speaks many languages, okay? Any Spanish-speaking fans here today? ¿Cómo te portaste este año? That means, did you behave yourselves? Bien? ¿Qué vas a querer esta Navidad? ¿Juguetes? See? Okay. ¿Regalo? I just said, what would you like for Christmas? Gifts? Toys? All right. So that's basically all I do. But I'm counting on the moderator to carry me through with good questions, and I kid you not, he leads off with this question. Is it true that Ole Anderson did not like a promo that Raven did in WCW? The dreaded yes or no answer. It's like, for something to make sense, to appeal to the most, and I understand we've got a very intelligent crowd here, right? But these are people, like, they just know some stuff from the Attitude Era. You have to be all-inclusive. In order for that question to make any sense, you have to know that Ole Anderson was the producer of the interview segments. You have to know Ole was kind of a cranky, cantankerous, older guy. And you have to know that Raven was doing a take on I'm going to knock you out, right? It was funny to be there, because Raven did this thing. He's like, I'm going to knock you out. Flamingo's going to knock you out. And just looking at Ole's face, like having no idea what the hell he was talking about. And he was repping, but I have no way to tell that story, right? And then he follows that up by saying, is it true that there were plans for you, Jake Roberts, and Butch Reed to be a team in WCW? Another yes or no answer, and I said, yes. He said, what happened? And I said, I don't know, it was 27 years ago. And then followed that one up by asking about my experiences in Global Championship Wrestling. I'm like, dude, I was there 2 weeks. No one cares about the, and it was like the hardest thing again was now I have to pretend I'm having a good time when I am not. And it was really awkward. It was really tough. And thankfully, I had those 3 lines of Spanish that I speak fluently. And I did a Vince McMahon imitation, and I left okay, but it was like really, really struggling. And that was one of the most difficult things is pretend that you have it going on when you don't. But sometimes, and one of the reasons I was actually excited about this show is sometimes you don't know what you have until you go out there and you roll the dice. And it took me back to, I think this is 1988, Continental Championship Wrestling. And I'm driving with Robert Fuller, who was like my mentor. How many of you know who Robert Fuller is, right? One of the great true characters. He was known as Tennessee Lee in Colonel Robert Parker in WCW, Tennessee Lee, I believe, in WWE. But Robert was like my mentor. He believed in me when a lot of people in the Deep South did not. And it made my life a lot easier to know that somebody out there thought that what I had to offer was worth listening to. And we're driving to a small town in Mississippi, and I'm going to wrestle Rotten Ron Starr that night. And Robert starts filling me in about Rotten Ron Starr. He's going, Jacko, I don't think Ron likes me and Jimmy too much. Jimmy was Jimmy Golden, his tag team partner. I said, why is that, Rob? He goes, Jimmy and I gave him a double back suplex and broke his neck. Don't think he's forgiven us for that. I'm afraid he might take it out on you tonight. And then he proceeds to tell me stories about Ron Starr, like breaking bottles against his head to do promos, how many lawsuits he has out there for beating up fans in the audience. And he's going to take it out on me. So I got up there and did the younger guy, the respectful thing to do. I said, excuse me, Mr. Starr. I should point out that STAR was an acronym for show tolerance and respect. No? Too vague? Sorry about that. No, it wasn't. He was rotten, man. And he had that thick, that pulled taffy look on his head, all scarred up. And I walked up to him and I said, hello, Mr. Starr. My name is Cactus Jack. Is there anything you'd like to do out there tonight? He looked at me and said, I'll see you in the ring. Holy crap. I didn't say anything for the S-H-I-T word, right? But I was scared. I didn't scare easy, but he'd broken bottles over his head, and he had vengeance on his mind. He was going to take it out on me. Hadn't quite gotten around to forgiving Robert and Jimmy for breaking his neck. Now he's going to see me in the ring? I was terrified. And then we locked up. Holy crap, I'm getting goosebumps. I swear to you, just thinking about it, because it was like magic. And we brawled all over the building. And at the end of that night, it was like I'd found my calling. So years go by, we probably wrestled 10 times, and every night was better than the other. The last, all over the buildings. And man, it was wild stuff, and improvising as we go, and some of the bumps I've taken, I hadn't even thought of them beforehand. They're just coming to me. And Ron's calling stuff. He's leading, I'm following, but I was there like we were a team. And so years go by, 27 years or whatever, and I get a call about whether or not I'd be willing to write a foreword for Rotten Ron Starr's upcoming book. I said, yeah, sure I will. Like weeks went by, I hadn't written a word. Guy says, how you doing on that foreword? I said, I just haven't thought of it yet. A few more weeks go by, nothing. And he goes, how about just a blurb? That's where you go, hey, no one does it like Ron's, just a couple of words, giving usually no inclination or indication that you've actually read that book. It's the truth, man. You can look, and it's like people are like, no one does it like Patterson. Most of these blurbs you get don't give any indication the book has actually been read. And I was like, a blurb? No, I'm not going to do that. I had this serious talk with myself about everything that he had done for me as opposed to what I had done for him. Like, he probably was on a $150 a night guarantee, right? At that time, that was pretty good money. The Deep South. So he probably made $1,500 on our 10 matches, whereas I got a new lease on life. I found my calling. And so I went home. This was during the filming of Holy Foley, where they actually rented out a house in Garden City. Oops, sorry about that. Emotion getting the best of me. rented out a house in Garden City, and my wife liked it so much she never left the rental house. I drove those 40 minutes. I worked all night, and I remember telling my daughter the next night, hey, will you listen to this? And I read her that story, and she goes, Dad, what do you mean? You would go out there and wrestle without talking to somebody? I said, honey, like sometimes people even speak the same language. And she said, well, what did you do? I said, we just went out there and did the best you could. And she goes, well, how were the matches? And I said, well, some of them were awful. I'm going to be honest. But there were certain nights when everything was right and you felt like you could hold the crowd in the palm of your hand. And you just had this feeling that there was the element of magic in the air. And I talked about this a little bit in my special. And I said, man, you can predict a lot of things. You can go over a match from A to Z if that's the way you get over the finish line best. No guarantee you're going to have that added element of magic. And I swear to you, I think it's that unseeable but very real feeling out there, that element that takes a good match and turns it into a great match, takes a great match and turns it into the stuff of legend. If things are going right and you guys play a major role in how things go tonight, that AEW show, hopefully you'll have a couple of those great matches that transcend into greatness because that element is alive and well. Case in point. Thanks, man. Applause break. A little case in point. By the way, I'm going on record as saying Billy Gunn has never looked happy in that photo. Go ahead, zoom in on that. He's got a look on his face that reads to me as if it says, this should be me. Just putting it out there, okay? There you go. He's thinking, that should be me. He should be carrying me. Instead, I've got his fat ass on my shoulders. Several years back, there was a guy who did this great series of promos where he took voice actors, very talented voice actors, and had them reenact great wrestling promos. And the one I liked best was the voice actor doing Morgan Freeman reciting Dusty Rhodes' Hard Times promo. It was a work of genius. It was like, they slap you on the back and say a computer took your job, Daddy. So my youngest son saw me laughing one night, and he decided to look up the original Hard Times promo, and he really fell in love with it to the point where every day when I came home, he was working on that promo, and we've even got it up there on YouTube, and he's there wearing like a white Stetson hat. You know, the real promo, I just looked at it again, and Dusty was wearing like a beautiful sports coat, you know, with a vest and blue jeans, right? Because he's the dream. But in our promo, he was wearing a Stetson cowboy hat and a blue denim button down. He had like 18 Band-Aids on his head. So he looked like the dream. And it just filled me with such joy to know that my son could appreciate the classics. So what I'd like to do is give you a little bit of my take on the Hard Times promo, okay? I haven't committed it to memory. Ric Flair, you put hard times on this country when you took the American dream out. And you don't know what hard times are. Hard times are when the textile workers can't work, can't put food on their table. That's hard times. That's hard times. Hard times when a man works a job for 30 years. 30 years! They slap him on the butt, they hand him a watch and say, a computer took your job, Daddy. You put hard times on this country when you took Dusty Rhodes out. Now, I admit, I do not look like the athlete of the day is supposed to look. My belly is just a little big. My hiney is just a little big. But I am bad, and brother, they know I'm bad. And there were two bad people in the history of this world. One of them was John Wayne. He's dead, brother. The other one's right here, Dusty Rhodes. And what I love about that promo, two things I specifically love about it. Is that if Virgil Riley Runnels had handed that promo in as an English essay, he would have received a C- or worse. And that bad boy would have been lit up with a red marker like it was Ralphie's Red Rider essay in Christmas Story, right? I could just see the comments like, Mr. Runnels, there were more than 2 bad people in the history of the world. And if we were to compile such a list, it's highly unlikely that American actor John Wayne would be on that list, right? The other thing I love about it is knowing, and this is even given that my son is a member of the WWE creative writing team, and I know how hard he works, endless, thankless hours, that you could not list a team, find a team of writers. Vince McMahon certainly could just not go into a booking meeting and go, okay, I need someone to write me a Hard Times promo. You couldn't do it. No matter how eloquent it was, no matter how hard somebody worked on it, you couldn't capture that spirit and the imagination, and yet you take this imperfect work, right? Grammatically and historically incorrect, and you put it in the hands of a master, and he imbues it with that sense of pride and love and passion, and you literally have a work of art that stands the test of time, a work of art that can touch the life of a child who wasn't born until 20 years after it was given. That's what I love about wrestling. That's what I love about wrestling. Now, before we go to questions, I wanted to take you back. A lot of you came in from out of town, right? How many flew in from outside of the... Okay, quite a few. How many came in from outside the country? All right, that's pretty cool, all right? So how many of you were around in 2006 when I wrestled Edge at WrestleMania? All right. I want to take you back in time because the build-up to that match was really simple, right? Edge called me out on the fact, at my request, called me. How are we doing the F-bomb scale? We haven't really needed it yet, right? Okay. It's really just a crutch. It's like someone using a chair shot because they're afraid they're not going to get a reaction unless they do something extreme, right? It's really just an excuse, says the man who took more chair shots than anybody. I'm still thinking of ways to use it. It would largely depend on these questions, okay? But Edge called me out on the fact that despite my legendary reputation, I'd never had that one defining WrestleMania moment. And in fairness to me, when I retired for good the first time, in 2001, or 2000, there was no acknowledgement that you needed to have this defining WrestleMania moment, right? And then Shawn Michaels came around and he declared himself Mr. WrestleMania, and people started coming from around the world, and they started putting these things, taking them out of arenas and putting them in stadiums, and words started getting around the locker room. Oh, Foley's never had a defining WrestleMania moment. And I would think to myself, okay, maybe, but no one came through on those in-your-house matches like I could. No one came through bigger when it mattered less than me. When you're looking at me, you're looking at Mick Foley, the #1 name in secondary pay-per-view shows. But I had this one chance to turn that all around. I'd had the chance 2 years earlier when I teamed up with The Rock to take on Evolution at the Garden. I choked. I played it safe. Literally said a prayer. And the prayer consisted of the words, please, God, don't let me suck out there. That's not reaching for the stars. Not sucking is not the same thing as thriving. I was playing not to lose instead of playing to win. I was breaking my own rules. I'll forever regret the day when I thought to myself, good enough is good enough, because it's not good enough. I had this one last chance to make that final WrestleMania impression, man, and I thought I had the best all-around performer in the business, in Edge, to help me carry that off. And so I came up, man, I was wired, not on any type of hallucinogenics, but I was wired on Tori Amos music. I'd listened to Winter like 6 times in a row. I might as well have been in a different world. So much so that I walked through and I opened up the curtain. I saw Edge and Lita standing there in the gorilla position, which is the last place you see before the world sees you, before you hit the ring. And I just walked up to them and I said, I think we should say a prayer for our safety out there tonight. officially making it the most surprised I'd been by words leaving my own mouth since I asked a hitchhiker to jerk me off while I drove. Wow. Oh, we're televising this? My bad. In fairness, in my defense, it wasn't a demand. It was just a suggestion. I was like, listen, dude. It wasn't a dude, but it was. It was just like, do you think, it's a long drive. It's either I Spy or maybe just, And she looked at me so earnestly. She said, oh, I'd like to. And she meant it. But I'm afraid it would be disrespectful to my boyfriend. Did I mention the boyfriend was asleep in the back seat of the car? Yeah, it's true. And so we drove on. Played a I Spy, and then when the boyfriend woke up in the cracked burgundy interior of my piece of crap 79 Ford Fairmont, he asked the young lady a question, and she turned around on her knees like to lean over, and when she did, she surreptitiously and simultaneously grabbed a handful of the hardcore legend's most private part. And I thought that was so cool. So. And she's here in the back row. I'm just kidding, man. And then we went out there and we really tore it down, We really tore it down to the point where when it was odd, it's like this juxtaposition because we're both bleeding, and I lose. I get speared through that table, that was on fire. It was a classic WrestleMania moment. And Earl Hebner made the count, and even as I was surrounded by this odd potpourri of burnt hair, charred flesh, and stale blood, Earl hit that 3 count. Edge said, I love you, in a way that absolutely does not come across as homoerotic in our little world of wrestling, not in the least. And I felt this giant weight lifted off my shoulder, and it was this amazing moment. Some people think we were playing it really dangerously. But you can see they had 6 fire marshals in the audience ready to put us out of the slightest sign of danger. And even though we didn't actually go up in flame, I lost all the forearm hair from about here on up. Everything was taped, was not burned. Everything else was gone. Edge lost his eyelashes. But those fire marshals were there to keep us out of the harm's way. But what you don't know, unless you look very diligently, someone else out in the crowd that night, and sometimes in this business, you don't know who your friends are until your most difficult trials. And so I want you to, if you go home after tonight's match, you want to watch Omega and those guys tear it down, that's great. But if you have a chance, before you go to bed, watch the match I had with Edge, frame by frame. And you will see in the second row, Jake the Snake Roberts, Molson Golden in one hand, zipper down, proving that at least one person in this world really would piss on me. If I was on fire. All right, with that being said, let's take some questions. I thought that went pretty well. Huh? What do you think? All right. Okay, our roving man.
All right. What's your name and where are you from?
Wait, hold on a second.
Oh, okay.
Get over here, Shivani. Do you know on the most important night of my life when I won the WWE title, your dad went out there and he tried to spoil the day. And he took what should have been a very special moment for me and he tried to ruin it. And I want you to tell him one thing straight from my lips. Tell him, thank you. Because when those ratings came in that next night, brother, It changed the way not just the fans, but especially the people inside the business looked at me. I went from respected journeyman to like top guy overnight. So thank you, Tony Schiavone. Thank you, Eric Bischoff, for allowing me at age 54 to stand before you in an ill-fitting flannel shirt, sweatpants, literally $10 sneakers from Walmart without socks, and make a living telling stories here, right here in Schaumburg, Illinois.
All right, we have a question here. What's your name? Where are you from?
I'm Brett from St. Cloud, Minnesota. Mick?
Thank you.
Mick, good to see you. Mr. In Your House.
The #1 name in secondary pay-per-views.
Absolutely. Sean can't take that from you.
Never know.
So I was wondering, do you have any favorite stories, memories, or experiences with Bruce Prichard, and can you share one with us?
Yeah, man. Well, Bruce and I started doing these stage shows together, you know, like, and we were scared, right? You take someone out of your comfort zone. Like, it's a different type of feeling. This was like in 2008, right? We got the chance to do it. And we'd be in front of crowds of like 16 people. But we were terrified to go out there, you know? But we did it. Like, I remember specifically, like, going to Vegas, right? And this is one of the saddest things that was ever written about me. It was actually the best crowd we ever had. We had 350 people there, okay? 200 of them were VIP meet and greets, and they decided to put those 200 people, 100 to the one side of the stage, 100 to the other, and then the other 150 people were sprinkled throughout the same 3,500-seat theater that Elvis Presley did his residence in. So it was like it was our biggest crowd, but it was a smattering of people. And a review came out, and these words still sting to this day. They said, "The man who used to play to tens of thousands now plays to tens of tens." Ouch. And then I came to realize over the long haul, like I go back to where, how many kids are here? How many young kids? Yeah. Okay. Just don't put the earmuffs. Oh, put the earmuffs on and simultaneously close your eyes, okay? Okay, you do it or this show's not going on, all right? Where are you here by yourself? All right, let's just say when I portray this iconic figure with a red suit, right? So I do the best I can. I swear to you, I put as much into those performances in a living room. We have this sneak a peek thing where children think that I don't see them, right? They're woken up from a dead sleep by their parents. And then my son and my son's my elf, and I put on a performance without acknowledging I have a crowd, you know, looking on. And so we get out of this one house, and my son was just on fire with his dialogue they've been working on for months. And I said to him, my heart was racing. I said, "Buddy, I feel like I just had a huge pay-per-view show." He goes, "But Dad, there are only 3 people there." I said, "It doesn't matter. It's just about creating something, you know, something and bringing about memories." And so I really have Bruce to thank for helping me do that. I don't think I could have done it on my own, you know, like we were really holding on to each other for support. And I think the world of Bruce. I love the fact that he has, all right, this is giving me a chance to put over Bruce and tell a story I've already told, but doggone it, doing a Vince McMahon imitation just makes me feel good. Because I knew that I wasn't what he was looking for. So much so I never set my sights on WWE. I always thought I was a WCW guy. And I remember seeing Bruce, maybe the first time I'd ever met him at LaGuardia Airport. And he came up to me and he talked to me. This is like 92. And I talked about this in a previous special that once a year I would call WWE headquarters when my WCW contract was rolling over. And within 30 seconds I'd be dismissed and be told that they weren't looking for any new talent. And then I would turn on Raw at Monday and I would see people like Mantor, Duke the Dumpster Drozy. And I'm like, don't they know that I know they're lying to me? And I finally did get the call, largely because JR, you know, he waged a very steady campaign on my behalf for the better part of 2 years. And so Bruce told me it was actually at a booking meeting in the fall of 1995. Jim Ross brought up my name one more time. According to Bruce, Mr. McMahon slammed his hand down on the table and said, "All right, damn it. I'll bring him in." but I'm covering up his face. So if you were wondering what the deep, hidden philosophical meaning behind the Mankind mask was, there was none. All right, next question.
All right, we have Kevin from Chicago. Kevin, what's your question?
Hey, Mick, first of all, thanks for coming to Chicago and doing this. We love having you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
My question is, you were the one who introduced us to the 24/7 championship
I did.
On Raw. Personally,
You guys booing the 24/7 championship? Oh, you're about to get a little 1995 Cactus Jack on your ass.
So I personally, I love what R-Truth and Drake Maverick are doing with that title.
Yeah.
I think some weeks it's the best thing on Raw. I just want to know what was your thoughts of those guys and how they've presented that title since you introduced it.
Yeah, I was just talking about this in an interview yesterday, and I said, I have the luxury of declining things if I don't think they're good, or if I have something better. Case in point, I was invited to the Raw 25th anniversary, January of 2018, and at first I accepted, and I called Mr. McMahon, and I said, Vince, I really think I have something else to offer. 20 years of Hell in a Cell is coming around. I think I could play a major role in that angle, even if it's just putting someone else over, and I think it would be better if I didn't appear on the Royal Rumble show. And that's Royal Rumble 25-year anniversary. It's a pretty big deal, and I declined that. So I can decline things, but I like the idea, so much so that even though they filmed that episode of Raw in Albany, New York, the week prior to that was in London, England, and I was just coming back from the UK. I did 3 shows, spoken word shows, with The Undertaker in the United Kingdom, and I was willing to go back again because I believed in that title. Now, I understood to a certain extent that we were baiting and switching people by making them think they were going to get the hardcore title, but I did not know the extent of the vitriol I would receive. And I could feel people, first of all, I got lost about 5 times during my promo. I really did. I never felt so lost. I was scrambling to cover points, and it was too serious a promo for a comedic title. But they started getting with it when I said, it's something you defend. You're not just a champion, in the ring. You're a champion when you're eating breakfast, when you're sleeping, when you're training, round the clock, 24 hours a day. I could feel that crowd like, ooh, 7 days a week, and I present to you, and it was almost like a big drum roll, like the 24/7 title. And if you can feel, actually audibly hear the oxygen leaving a giant arena, oh man, that's exactly what happened that night. I was like, oh, they're not happy with this at all. It was similar, much more pronounced, but similar to when I was the GM, and you'd be like, and this match, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, will take place next Monday. And you lose that oxygen, but never more so than we unveiled that title. But even when I went home and watched it, and I saw R-Truth hit Bobby Roode in the trunk of my rental car, as strange that was. Like, I happened to have had a nice rental car that night, so they asked me if I could stick around for 2 extra hours so Bobby Roode could hide in the trunk. And then when R-Truth opened up the front door and you had a referee sitting there, I thought to myself, all right, okay, I'm going to take some flack for a little while. But if you don't like that, you're not lying to me. You're lying to yourselves. And I knew right away what it would do. It'd give people a chance to shine, get a little spotlight who weren't normally on the show. Always great to see R-Truth. And Drake Maverick he had hardly any screen time, and now he's tearing it up with that thing. And it's like there's things you could only see in wrestling, right? Like, where else are you going to see a 6'6" Canadian Indian wearing trunks and boots on a golf course, winning a title? Or when I saw Drake Maverick wearing his title belt, I can call it a belt here, right? Call it a strap if I want, wearing his championship title at his wedding. I was like, oh, this is what I love about wrestling. And he walks up the aisle, and that camera pans out, and you see the black and white stripes of the wrestler's shoulder. I was like, he's going to lose the title. He's going to lose the title. And it was just, here's just an example, right? I get asked that question about the cell match all the time, right? So I got this call from Barry Blaustein, the guy who directed Beyond the Mat, and he was like, he was on his answering machine. He's like, I got a favor. I hate to ask this of you, but I'm working for this guy. His kids are really big fans. His name is Brian Grazer. I was like, Brian Grazer? I called back like, Brian, you want me to meet Brian Grazer's kid? Brian Grazer is the most powerful man in Hollywood, right? So I actually go to Imagine Entertainment. Hello, Mick Foley for Brian Grazer. Oh, yes, Mr. Foley, they're expecting you. I go up to the top. I get this great view of Los Angeles. And the very first question the kid asks is, okay, Mick, did it hurt? When the Big Show threw you off the stage and into the grave in a buried alive match. And I was like, you know what? I was just so excited that I made it into the grave on one short hop. I wasn't even thinking about the pain. And I came across a photo of that just recently. And it's a photo. I'm just trying to think of what someone who is not exposed to our world, who doesn't completely appreciate it, what they think when they see a man with a leather mask and a button-down work shirt coming out of a grave to put a sock puppet in the mouth of a 7-foot giant wearing a blue Speedo and knee-high leather boots. And if you need an, all right? And if there's an explanation necessary, it's not going to be good enough, right? But I think the 24/7 gives me a chance to really relish some of those great things that can only happen in the world of wrestling. I go back to what one of the young bucks said about wrestling. It's like it's literally anything you want it to be. You know, you can have a 5-star classic and then follow it up with something utterly ridiculous and smile your ass off through both events equally. So I love it. To this day, I still love it. And I love those moments that remind me of why I fell in love with it to begin with.
All right, another question here. What's your name? Where are you from?
I'm Greg from, we'll say St. Louis. Sure, it's easier
Okay,
that way.
you got it.
Hey, as a kid, I was scared to death of Cactus Jack.
Good.
And I loved the Cactus Sting feud that went on. It was fantastic. And
Thanks.
I always wondered how bad did it hurt when Sting would take that elbow. I wasn't worried about
How
Cactus
bad did it hurt
Jack.
him?
How bad did it hurt Sting?
You'd have to ask Sting, I think.
So my question is, I'm willing to take it if you're willing to give
I
it.
can't do that.
Oh, come on. I'll sign waivers, Mick.
No, man. Well, listen, I'm going to tell you a story, all right? This regards my Hall of Fame induction in 2013. I remarked on the fact I'd never done everything I set out to, and I said I never actually defeated Chris Jericho, right? Which he brought up a time or two in his best-selling memoir, A Lion's Tale. An excellent book, even though it never actually hit. And there's no shame in that, even though I did it twice. But when I remarked on that, next thing I know, Jericho's up on the stage at Madison Square Garden, like most hallowed hall in all of the world, right, when it comes to performance art. And I'm like, all I have to do is drop an elbow, any type of elbow. Like, it doesn't have to be a giant flying elbow. Like, any type of elbow, I'm going to get this monstrous response from that garden crowd. But then I exercised what I call the instantaneous Foley risk-reward ratio analysis. I was never crazy. Almost anything I did that looked crazy went through my brain and was rationalized instantaneously. And if I decided the reward was worth the risk, by God, I was going to do it. But that's what I did that night. And I came to the conclusion that this is going to hurt for like 2 weeks. And I literally said to Jericho, I'm all out of elbows, brother. And then Punk, you're going to see Punk here in a few minutes, right? Ask him about this. I had no idea what he's even doing on stage. My first thing is he's here to give us the RKO. I wasn't even thinking Diamond Cutter. RKO, and then I realized he's the referee. And I realized that risk-reward ratio analysis be damned if I don't drop some type of elbow in some way, shape, or form on that stage at Madison Square Garden for the remainder of my life. I'm going to be forced to wake up each and every morning, look in the mirror. You know what I'm going to see looking back at me? A pussy. Not on my watch. So I literally leaned over to Chris and I said, you're going to take all the impact on this. That's exactly what I did. I dropped my entire body weight on Chris Jericho, and the next night he lost to Fandango at Mania. So no, I'm not dropping an elbow on you. How much money you got? I'm all out of elbows, man. Seriously.
All right, we have another question here. Comes from Nico. Nico, what's your question?
Okay, it's kind of a two-part question.
Is that fair? Is that fair to everyone else? You think
Well, I think you might like both
All
of
right,
them.
go for it. We'll hear the first one.
Okay, first of all,
Make it good.
so tomorrow
Drum roll,
you're going
please. Drum roll for Nico. Go for it.
Really, guys? Okay. Tomorrow you're going against Frank the Clown at a show.
Jesus.
What is wrong with that guy?
Oh, Jesus.
And two, do you have any good Owen Hart stories you can tell us?
I see Frank's here. Thinking about dropping that F-bomb right now. My big concern, right, was that my last singles match in my career was against the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And I had my issues with Rick over the years, but God, I'll be proud to the day I go to my grave that my last match was against Ric Flair and not Frank the Clown. And therefore, like, I had to be like, no, it's not a match. It's a face-to-face confrontation. Call it whatever you want, but it's not a match. There'll be no referee, no timekeeper's bell, nothing signifying this is an actual contest. And I have one goal in mind in that match, and that's to make sure at the end of it, there will be no clown babies in my future. And Owen was just the best guy to travel with. You know, his ribs were good-hearted. I think sometimes people got upset. I would get upset. He would just get you to the point, you know, where you'd be like, we're living, you know, he'd call you up and tell you, like, for example, in a Scottish accent that they had undercharged you for your room and that you needed to come down and settle the difference. And then when you're just about ready to snap, he'd start insulting what you did for a living, you know, like, Mr. Foley, I couldn't help but notice you were wrestling Vader, you were stomping your foot on the mat. Like, how much of that is fake? And you're like, oh, come down there and I'll show you. And then you hear him laughing. So, that's not a good illustration. I did talk about the bag of popcorn, you know, in a match we had. And that was probably my favorite story just because the San Jose was sold out. You know, there's 17,000 people. And we were only intent, like our only goal was to make Steve Austin break character and laugh. Didn't matter, there were 17,000 people out there. Like, we'd almost gotten there the night before in Anaheim when I dumped a box of soft drink lids on Owen. And as they were fluttering through the air like butterflies, landing softly on his head, his knees were buckling like this, you know. And I look over, Steve's about to lose it, and he almost did. And I was like, we're going to get him tonight, you know, we're going to get him. And then I was like, Meltzer's in the audience, you know. Dave Meltzer does the Wrestling Observer, like, we can't have a negative 4-star match. And I was like, no, you're damn right we can. We're gonna. And we did. We had the worst match I can recall. But we made Steve break character and laugh. And he had that great laugh. He had those lat muscles just covered up his face, and his lats were shaking. It was like, we did it. We did it. So, yeah, I loved Owen. He was one of the nicest men I ever met, one of the best workers. So, you know what? One of the things I love most about my friendship with Owen is that I had no idea whether or not he thought I was any good in the ring. Honestly, like, our friendship is not predicated on that. And I mentioned it to Bret, and Bret went ahead and told me. I was like, no, I don't want to know. And he's like, oh, he thought you were really good. So I got that going for me. But, yeah, thanks. Thanks for that question.
All right, we have AJ here. AJ, what is your question for Mick Foley?
AJ, I applaud you for wearing a hideous fanny pack. Come on up here. Can you come on up here with your media press pass? Come on up here and show the world your bravery. There you go. Buffalo Wild Wings. Yeah, wear it with pride. That's right. There you go. You know what I'm going to do for that? I'm going to open that fanny pack up. I'm going to give you my water bottle with my cheat sheet on it. Instead of writing words down on my hand, I now write them on a water bottle. You thought I was, there it is. What didn't I get to here? I think we got okay. Oh, we got everything there, okay. You know what? I didn't get it. Okay, go ahead, because I just realized I am playing not to lose. I just saw. Can you read what it says down here?
20 years.
No, 20 years. What is? You can't really remember my writing. O, red starts there. O, M, E, G, A, promo. I was thinking of cutting a fantasy promo on Kenny Omega. You think I should do it?
Yeah.
All right, how about you ask this question, and I'll try to summon the intestinal fortitude.
I'll hold it.
I was going to play it safe and not do it because there is a good, the odds are high that I'm going to tank this thing and send you to CM Punk's show on a down note. Go ahead, buddy.
You have the 3 faces of Foley. If
Yes.
you could choose a 4th face, what would it be?
Ooh. Ooh. I'd like to be Chris Jericho so I could get his contract. But you know what? Wait, hold on. Come back here. Well, it's just, we need the microphone. So, all right, what's your name again? It doesn't matter what your name is. Wait, no. I'll be honest. You know what? When I became the commissioner in 2000, I felt like that was the 4th face of Foley because it was a dramatic departure from what I'd ever done before. I mean, I've been nerdy as dude love, but I really took my own personality. I dialed that up to 11, you know, and I did stuff that was fun and creative and rarely ever scripted, and I thought I played an important part in the show, you know. So much so that, like, after 20 years, they voted on, like, the best GM or commissioner, and I got the nod even though I only did it for 6 months. So I really felt like I created some memories for people, and I really enjoyed doing that. I consider that to be the 4th face of Foley. High five. Boom. All right, pressure's on, okay? This is how we're going to end our show. I don't know if I can do this, all right? But maybe when I lift my face up, should I go for it? All right, you know, I'll try to be Cactus Jack. I'll put my head down as 2019 Mick Foley. When I bring it up again, I will have transformed into 1995 ECW Cactus Jack. No, I'm not there yet. Maybe a cactus chant would be good. It's not meant to happen. But you guys were a great audience. All right, one more try. Kenny Omega, you take great pride in being the greatest wrestler in the world. As a matter of fact, you refer to yourself as the human Modi factory. You can have classic matches with just about anybody. But Kenny, this is where the Modi factory shuts down. Business is about to go into a recession. You are so good, my friend, that you can have a 5-star match with a broomstick. Can't you? Well, you're looking at a 300-pound broomstick with a bad back and wobbly knees, and I dare you, I defy you to have a good match with me. It can't be done, son. And it won't be done. Because I'm what you might refer to as a triple threat. You can't call a spot backstage with me because I'm going to forget it. You can't call it in the ring because I'm not likely to hear it. And even if I could, we both know, for the love of God, I can't do it. You're about to enter some very rare air here, Mr. Omega. Some very rare air. We're talking about Mean Street Posse air. We're talking about Oz versus Kazmaier air. We're talking about Al Snow and Boss Man Kennel from Hell type of air. Help me out here. I'm drawing a blank here. I'm going to need motivation. All right. Omega, you may have seen the three faces of Foley, and you may have feared Cactus Jack. You may have winced at Mankind, and you may have laughed in mocking entertainment at Dude Love. But come All Elite Wrestling, All In. You're about to see the fourth face of Foley, because this is your future, and trust me, oh, the future sucks. Because you're not facing Cactus Jack, capable of having 4-star matches with Sting. No, I never hit 5-star air, and neither will you, never again. Because all you have to do is have one really bad match to bring your cumulative rating down. It's like the bad review on Amazon, dragging a 4-star review down to 3, but the difference being, Amazon doesn't have negative star reviews. But thanks to the Dave Meltzer Wrestling Observer rating, we sure as hell do. So you size up this first-class stinker I'm going to serve up on a silver platter for you, and you go from 5 stars to 3, just like that. From the 4 seasons to the Quality Inn. You go from being a 5-star man to a 3-star man, and the only thing people ever remember about you is you stunk up the ring with a WWE Hall of Famer, and it was your fault. Because I'm Mick Foley. I'm the future. I'm not Cactus Jack. I'm not Mankind. I'm not Dude Love. I am the fucking Modi Killer. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Fight Plus is the ultimate digital platform for live sports and entertainment, and they're now offering a free 7-day trial at tryfight.com. Fight Plus is packed with a premium live event schedule, over 1,000 hours of live action every year, and a library of more than 4,000 hours on demand, plus exclusive content you can't get anywhere else. Fight is a great partner of ours. They support us, so let's support them. Give that free 7-day trial a shot, and you'll be a member for life. That's tryfight.com. tryfite.com. Boys and girls, let's take a time out right now and tell you about something that I absolutely love, and I know you will too. I'm talking about HelloFresh. You've heard Mick talk about the Foley Weight Loss Challenge, but one of those things is he wants to be more mindful of what he's eating. But here's the other thing. He wants to save money. We all know that Mick is known for being frugal, but now he's trying to eat better too. And the real life hack of all that is how easy HelloFresh makes it to do both. They make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why they're America's #1 meal kit. They're going to send you pre-portioned ingredients and foolproof recipes right to your door. You can skip the checkout lines and get outside, enjoy that better weather, and at the same time, it's better for the environment. You see, there's a lower carbon footprint here, and you're going to have less food waste here, because when we go shop on our own, we buy too much. We all know that. You're going to cut down on that by 23%, and in fact, you're going to save money over takeout. That's right, it's 25% less money than takeout, 23% less waste than grocery shopping, but still super fresh. When they say HelloFresh, they mean it. These ingredients travel from the farm to your home in less than 7 days. And maybe you feel like you've been in a bit of a dinner rut. My wife and I have been guilty of this at times, where it feels like we're eating the same things over and over. They're going to have you try some new things. They've got over 40 recipes and over 100 seasonal and convenience items to choose from each week. So there's a ton of variety, Gotta keep those taste buds on their toes. I've tried some stuff I can honestly say I don't know that I would have. Like the falafel power bowl, it was delicious. Ready in 15 minutes or less too. Megan loved the fast and fresh pineapple chicken tacos. I have to admit, I don't know that I would have thought of that. Pineapple with the chicken in the taco. She loved it. I did too. You will as well. And buddy, you don't have to be a pro in the kitchen. They got photos. It doesn't get any easier than that. The directions are so easy to follow, and it's fun to cook with your family. We had both of the girls here last Friday night. We did it all together. It was fantastic. Go try it for yourself right now. It's HelloFresh.com/Foley50 and use the code Foley50. We'll get you 50% off. Plus your first box will ship for free. That's HelloFresh.com/Foley50. Use the code Foley50 and you'll get 50% off. Plus your first box will ship for free. And by the way, I want to remind everybody that we've got another fantastic Foley panel coming up. This time is from this past year in Nashville. Me and Mick Foley on stage in Nashville talking about him breaking in the business. You've never heard it before, so here we go. Let's do it.
Ready for Mick Foley? Let's do it. Here he is, the man of the hour, the WWE Hall of Famer, your hardcore legend, the one and only Mick Foley.
Thank you. And Conrad, may I thank you publicly for this prime 9 a.m. spot. I got 90 minutes of sleep last night.
90 minutes?
90 minutes. That's good for me. Hey, do you know what just happened to me backstage?
What just happened to you backstage?
I went to log on just to let people know to watch the Fight Network and received a direct message from Twitter telling me that I was flagged for imitating someone.
Were you flagged for imitating?
I was flagged for imitating Mick Foley, and I'm like, so I typed out a quick DM. I'm like, hey, I think you got the wrong person. The only guy imitating Mick Foley is Bubba Ray Dudley. Bang! Boom! But as far as cheap Mick Foley imitations go, pretty good. Pretty good.
I actually did see you shooting a selfie video back there, but I didn't have the proper context for what it was. Can you share with everybody how one proves that they are indeed Mick Foley?
Yeah, I just fired off a direct message in return to the direct message with a video of myself saying, my hair's a little shorter. And then I was like, I can show you, verifiable identification. So I told him the tail of 2 ears, the left ear, and then the right ear. And I was like, just Google it. No one else has that sense of commitment. But now I'm locked out. So if I don't, I'm locked out on my own account. So
this is real.
Yeah,
You're
this
locked
is
out
legit.
right now.
Yeah, I'm locked out. I was entering my information, username, email, password. They were telling me all three were incorrect. So I'm going to try to compartmentalize, put all that aside so we can have the best darn live Foley Is Pod podcast possible. Because that's what you deserve. Yeah.
So, of course, on Foley Is Pod, we've been really spending a lot of time talking about your storied career in wrestling. And, man, you have some rich history here in Tennessee. Do you know it?
I do, yeah. This is the fairgrounds, right?
Yes. Now, of course, as I described to people when they said, the Nashville Fairgrounds, I would say, oh, no, not the dump Jeff Jarrett used to run. They've torn that down just like we did his wrestling career years ago, and they now have this new, much nicer facility than the old asylum that you may or may not have been to.
Yeah, this is nice, but it's in the same place, right?
Yeah, well, it's actually up where the soccer stadium is
Okay.
now. So they tore it down to build the soccer stadium. I didn't know Nashville needed one of those, but they got one, and now here we are in the new Nashville Fairgrounds.
Nashville was my home base for my first full-time territory. We just called it Memphis in the wrestling. I think fans as well, if you're big fans, you just refer to it by the largest city that you run regularly. So Championship Wrestling Association was known as Memphis. World Class was known as Dallas. NWA was known as Charlotte. WWF was known as New York. And there's a story that when Eric Embry came up to me in when World Class, and he goes, brother, I just want you to know no one deserves it more than you. And I said, what do I deserve? He said, I heard you were going to New York. And I said, yeah, to visit my parents. I haven't seen them in about 8 months. So he thought I got the go-ahead to go to WWF, and that was not yet the case.
Well, since
everybody here is here to dump on Jeff Jarrett today. Let's just make it a family affair. His dad was notorious, if you will, for maybe not the best payoffs in the world. What was your experience working in Memphis?
In fairness to Jerry, I think the payoffs dropped precipitously when attendance did. So I came in when the territory was down and going up. Robert Fuller came in with the stud stable, and they started to energize the heel faction. I came on board as like the most junior member of the stud stable, but yeah, the payoffs are pretty tough. I was talking last night among the just the Foley house watching SummerSlam. My wife and my youngest child were at SummerSlam, but my daughter was watching with me, and I was talking about the rumor about Stone Cold hating Jeff Jarrett.
Right.
And I believe...
Is it a rumor, though?
Well, I don't believe so. I mean, unless Steve has found inner peace, I do know that Steve can hold a grudge for a while. And it all goes down to Wednesdays in Evansville, Indiana. It's about a 2.5-hour drive. You guys know they had a Coliseum that wasn't really a Coliseum. But anyway, that was where we got our payoffs. And Evansville was almost always a $25 payoff. One of the great feathers in my cap is that when Gorgeous Gary Young and I turned babyface and we battled Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden, we packed the place and we got $50 that night. But it was always kind of a sobering experience to get your check. And Steve, this is direct from Steve, he said he was looking at his check, and Jeff came over, slapped him on the shoulder, and said, "It's not going to get any bigger by looking at it." Ooh, and Steve didn't take kindly to that. He held on to that for like 20 years. Maybe he's let go, but I believe there was some genuine friction there stemming from what would have been 1990.
Of course, Memphis is one of the homes of studio wrestling. What was that one of the first places you did studio wrestling? Had you grown up seeing any studio wrestling? What was that like?
Actually, I had not grown up seeing studio wrestling because I did not get the Superstation until I was maybe 18 or 19 years old, so I didn't see any of the great stuff from Georgia Championship Wrestling. I was kind of surprised when I saw it. It was shown to me by a real good friend of mine, Brian Hildebrand, who's no longer with us, but he loved Memphis wrestling. And I was like, but one of the camera shots is like a different color than the other ones. He's like, it works. It works. Like if you grew up watching that, it made total sense. But I will say, when I stepped into the studio, I drove all night. I did no stops. The only rest I got, I slept for 2 or 3 hours in the parking lot of the, I think it was Channel 5 Studios. And I remembered seeing Robert go out there to cut his promo, and I was just mesmerized. Robert Fuller was a great promo man. He was not somebody I had seen growing up. I'd only read about him in the magazines. He would go on to be a mentor to me. But that was a wild first day because I'd never seen anything like that. I'd been an extra on WWE tapings, WWF tapings. I'd done a handful of favors, as we call them, for the big stars. But I'd not seen studio wrestling, and it was definitely exciting.
How different is it, or what was your approach to, to use wrestling jargon, to try to figure out how to get over with this crowd in a much different setting?
Yeah.
Did it change your approach? Did you have to think about that?
Well, here was the deal. Apparently, can we show one of my promo shots?
Oh, I think, yeah.
We can. Okay, because I was
find one.
I was cheap. I was legendarily thrifty. Yeah, by out of necessity to begin with. But I did spend $110 on a professional photographer with a studio, went to the studio with a curling bar and weights and baby oil, got what the closest I can get to a pump, and then I hit a pose designed to hide all my flaws. Besides, I was dressed from almost head to toe anyway. But it looked, believe it or not, like I was kind of jacked in the photo. So rumor has it that when I actually got in the ring to wrestle, that Jeff Jarrett and Booker, Randy Hales, and someone else, they were comparing the photos to the guy in the ring and had trouble believing that I could be the same guy. The other thing I had working against me was that when you're an independent wrestler, especially in the mid to late 80s, you're only concerned about getting that match over that you're in. You're only getting yourself over enough, with the, yelling at the crowd, mic work if you have a chance to do it, to the point where the stuff you do means something. But I was never heavy on offensive moves, even at my peak. And so I was always just focused on getting the guy I was working with over. And I did not realize that when a company is attempting to push you, you can't take the same bumps for someone low on the card that you're taking for someone higher on the card. And it affected my push to the point where they were thinking of letting me go.
Wow.
After a day. But fortunately, that night at the fairgrounds, you would go from the Memphis wrestling studio. You would drive, I think it's 200 miles. Might be 240. Anyone know how far from Memphis to Nashville? 200? And that was in the 55-mile-an-hour days. So that was about a three and a half hour drive. I got there, and the match was designed for me to lose, but it was me and Jimmy Golden against Jeff Jarrett and Bill Dundee in an anything goes match. And some of the same bumps, or a few of the same bumps that seemed out of place when I was working with Surfer Ray Odyssey in my first ever Memphis TV match, seemed perfectly in place and really working when I was doing it for Bill and Jeff. And so it was just, I've never before or since, or particularly since, been part of a match where the booker comes down midway through the match and changes the finish to some kind of inconclusive finish. And the reason they did that on the fly is they did not want to beat me, because they saw that what I had to offer was valuable. The only other issue, the days before cell phones, they couldn't track me down. I think I had 2 off days before I started again. They could not track me down to explain that to me. And I was sleeping in my car in a park, because I had no money. And somehow Randy Hales got a message to me, or someone got a message to me. I had to talk with him on a payphone about the pecking order and how you don't bump for bottom of the card guys like you would top of the card guys. Right. And that was new to me. I absorbed it. I tried to learn from it, but I came very close to being fired after one day in Memphis.
Well, I'm glad you didn't.
Me too.
But I am curious, overall, how valuable was your learning experience in the Memphis territory? I mean, do you think your career would have been any different without that experience?
Oh, it was vital. I hated it. I disliked, and I wrote about it in Have a Nice Day. Anyone remember Have a Nice Day? Was a towering New York Times #1 bestseller. It stayed on the list for 26 weeks. Not at the top, but stayed on it. But I did write about the times I had in Memphis not being fun. It just seemed like everyone was riding me. The only guys who cut me a break, Robert Fuller. Jeff, I know you were crapping on Jeff, but Jeff was always cool to me. Never slapped me on the shoulder and told me my check wouldn't get bigger by looking at it. But Robert, had it not been for Robert Fuller believing in me, I don't know. I remember specifically one of the RPMs, rock and roll RPMs, Mike Davis and Stan Lane asked me why I took such outlandish bumps for such little money. And I remember my answer at the time was, honestly, one of these days I hope I don't get up from it, and then I don't have to be in this business anymore. Like, that's how little I enjoyed what I was doing at that time. But there's no doubt, looking back on it, that it was an incredible experience. Anyone remember the old Asylum? Anyone go back to the late 80s and watching on Saturday nights now? Anyone? A few people? So you had your heels in one side of the building, you had your baby faces on the other. They did not intermingle. You did not see your opponent until you went out there, and you were wrestling in front of largely the same people every week. I mean, they were interchangeable, but a lot of repeat customers. And so you had to come up with something different every single week, and you often had to do it on the fly. And that was a really good training ground. So as much as I thought I disliked it, I would not trade that experience for anything. But I do remember how it felt to be treated in a less than kind manner, and I didn't like it. And so I resolved that if I ever got to be a big deal, I would not treat people that way, and I don't think I have. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, wrestling in the world needs more of that, so thank you for that. You mentioned Robert Fuller. I don't think we talk about him enough in wrestling. Do you got any good Robert Fuller stories you can share with us?
Oh, man, there's one that I repeated on, I mean, I'll be repeating something, it'll contain some harsh language here. Are you guys okay with a little Foley harsh language? There's a certain verb I may ask you to, fill in the blanks for. But, so Robert, like I said, was the one guy who believed in me. He was finally squaring off with Jeff Jarrett. Jeff was finally going to get his revenge. Jeff, week in and week out, had been beating down and gaining victories over everybody in the stable. And now one-on-one against Robert. I'm driving. I'm in the back seat of Robert's car. And he's like, Jacko, I don't know. I don't want to bleed down to my shoes this very first night. And I said, Rob, I have an idea. Rob had seen me take the ST plunge and warned me that there were only so many bumps on my body, and bumps like that were going to shorten my career in a hurry. But I said, what if we use that bump this night? You know, Jeff gets a hold of the boot. Robert ducks it. Boom, I take the boot. Off I go. And I did, but I had only taken this ST plunge once before in my life. It was just an impromptu bump on a spot show for $25. But I don't know if I didn't tuck my chin or whatever the case, but when I hit the ground, it split the back of my head wide open, resulting in a large pool of blood. Very effective for the audience. But when I got back there, Rob's, oh, Jacko, let me take a look at that. And he saw it, and he goes, oh, damn. It looks like a big old... And then he used the word for a woman's privates sitting on my head. And they go, damn, I don't know whether we should stitch it or... Then you apply your verb of choice there.
Which one did he pick?
He went with the F word, yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
he was calculating the idea of making love to the back of my head. Yeah.
Might not have been the first time. So you've mentioned Jeff Jarrett, and of course he's in the main event tonight with Ric Flair in his last match.
Sure
I'm
is.
curious, what do you think about the idea of Flair having one last match at 73 years old?
I'm all for it. You know. We all go out there. It's like Rocky Balboa said in Rocky Balboa. Like you have the he kind of paraphrased the Declaration of Independence. The pursuit of happiness. I'm pursuing something and nobody seems too happy about it. So I think everyone has the right to go out and do that. And I know Rick has trained really hard for it. You guys are primed for one last match from Rick, right? Yeah. Yeah, I think the atmosphere is going to be electric. This is, I would say, the biggest I'll call it an independent show. I don't know.
Yeah.
Biggest independent show in the country, right? I think so.
Jeff Jarrett in the main event on the opposite side. I don't know that anybody would have predicted he would have the weekend he had in SummerSlam last night, tonight in the main event. Are you surprised that it feels like, I've joked with him before, if cats have 9 lives, Jarrett has 10. He just keeps popping up everywhere. It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
I was surprised by that because he works for WWE, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's a vice president of live events.
And he was just on their SummerSlam. I think it's good. I understand there's actually going to be a camera crew from WWE here tonight to cover Rick's final match. Is that true, or is that something I'm not supposed to talk about?
There's going to be footage everywhere, I'm sure. I mean, Ric Flair sort of transcends wrestling at this point. He's a pop culture fixture, so I'm sure there will be a lot of cameras there.
But good for Jeff, and he's kept himself in amazing shape. And I've always liked Jeff.
All eyes on Jeff tonight, of course. You knew him back when he was really just cutting his teeth, right? What years would you have been working with him in
88.
Memphis?
So TV match-wise, I was on some type of tag team or 6-man almost every week with Jeff. I think in the build-up to Super Clash 3, my first pay-per-view event where I got paid $100. There we go. Took me 6 months to get my check from Vern Gagne, and it was for $100. Didn't even cover the hotel room. But I believe it was like an 8-man. It was a pretty fast-paced match, and it was me and Gary Young, one or two other heels, and it was Jeff and Scott Steiner. So somewhere there's a TV match where I had that Luke Gallows baby oil distribution where it ends at the exact point your fingers can reach. So I just feel like saying, Luke, get someone to put some of that baby oil in your rear deltoid. You know what I'm talking about? He is the most shined up guy, and he has never paused to ask anyone if they might want to get the rest of his shoulder. So that was what I had. The baby oil that goes up to here. And I had, I was about 235 at that time, moving pretty good. Jeff and I always had good matches, especially when I went to World Class and I was featured in a more prominent way. So Jeff he was going from Memphis to Dallas on a regular basis, and we had some really good matches in World Class in late 88 and 89.
Did you do stuff in World Class before the Jarretts were involved?
No, I got there when, so it was like a lateral move.
Right.
When I left Memphis, they already had a spot for me. So it wasn't like I was fired. We lost the loser leave town barbed wire match Thanksgiving weekend of 1988. And I went to Dallas, and it was like a brand new start. Like, it helped me fall in love with wrestling again. I don't know what it was that was different about it, but part of it was Booker Eric Embry just kind of giving me free reign. You know, going out there in a main event at the Sportatorium. I had only, so late 88, I only had 3.5 years of experience. It seemed like it took forever to get my break, but looking back on it, that's a short time to get a pretty big break. And Eric would tell me, hey, you call it, baby. And he was the top babyface in the company, telling me to call the main event match on a Friday night in the Sportatorium. So there was a really accelerated learning curve when I got to World Class.
Now, you're working Jeff back then where you're the heel and he's the babyface, is that right?
Yes.
Did you prefer working Jeff when he was a heel? I mean, did you ever do that?
I don't know if I ever worked Jeff. I can't tell you. Even though Mankind was a babyface in '99, I'm not sure. Maybe a few of the wrestling historians out there could tell me whether we had if I did have a match and don't remember it, it's because it was neither really bad or really good, because those are the matches you remember, and everything else kind of gets lost in the mixture. I don't recall having a match with Jeff. I could be wrong about it, but I was there during his run because I remember giving him the Have a Nice Day book on his final match when he wrestled China on the pay-per-view, and I did not know it was his final match. So he told me he was leaving, and when he saw I was surprised, he said, I thought that's why you gave me the book. I said, oh, no, I gave you the book because I like you. Like, I had like 20 copies to give away, and so I was giving them away to the guys in the back.
So I'm curious because a lot of times we hear guys talk about, you know, better as a babyface, better as a heel, and then there's their just consummate babyfaces out there. Ricky Morton, Ricky Steamboat, and I think even guys like Hulk Hogan, maybe they were just as good of a bad guy as a good guy, but I preferred Ric Flair as a bad guy. I just thought he did his better work there. But it's interesting to go back and think how that sort of changed with Jeff. It feels like a lot of the Memphis run, he was a good guy.
Yeah.
But when he becomes a national star, he was much better as a heel, right?
He was. Well, he'd also grown up watching some of the greatest heels of all time, right? Like in the territory days, a long run was a year.
Right.
So you would see guys come in and do their thing and sometimes be out in 6 months, and that was a pretty good run. And then you'd go and do it in the next territory. So Jeff grew up watching an assortment of incredible heels. Like anybody went through Memphis at that time. And so Jeff would have grown up watching it. I always call the begging off to be the Memphis backpedal, because everybody does that. Hey, let's talk it over, you know. So Jeff grew up watching the great ones, and he incorporated Jackie Fargo's strut into what he did. So he had a decided advantage over most of us.
When we're talking about Memphis, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Jerry the King Lawler.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, he really was the king. What was your experience with the king back then when you were cutting your teeth in
Well,
Memphis?
first of all, I want to let people know that even though we call it Memphis, almost everybody lived in Nashville. So if you're looking to make a pilgrimage, 317 West Edwin Street or maybe just 317 Edwin Street in West Nashville. At that point in time, it was a pretty rough part of town. I don't know what it's like now. I might make a trip there myself.
That's where you used to live?
That's where I lived. Yeah, I lived with an older woman and a guy. I rented a room from an older woman, and
I was thinking, there's
Just
the real
clear
story right there.
let's clear that up, all right? But Lawler was instrumental in bringing me in. Wahoo McDaniel saw me on an AWA show when I wrestled the Cheetah Kid. Ted Petty, you guys remember Ted Petty as Flyboy Rocco Rock at ECW. Wahoo recommended me to Lawler, and based on Wahoo's recommendation and the strength of my promo photos, my handwritten letter to Randy Hales was received. But a big deal for me was I remember being at Brian Hildebrandt's house, seeing the Wrestling Observer newsletter for the first time. I'd heard about it, heard rumors of this underground newsletter, but I'd never seen it. And Brian said, "Hey, you're in it." I'm in it. And in that issue, Meltzer referred to me. He said, Cactus Jack, who some consider to be the best no-name independent wrestler in the country. And people could say what they want about the Observer, but I'll tell you what, I had not received a single job offer prior to being printed in there. And I'd say within 48 hours, I had 3 full-time job offers, and I went with Memphis on the recommendation of Brian, who, as I mentioned, loved that territory. So Lawler was instrumental in getting me there, although I never faced him when I was part of the company.
What did you learn just being on the card with him? Because, boy, he really had Memphis fans in the palm of his hand.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'll go out and I'll say, in my opinion, Jerry Lawler was the greatest single territory guy that I've ever seen. Basically, he went elsewhere from time to time for spots, for shows. But he stayed in the Memphis territory his entire career up until he went to WWE and found a way, as both a babyface and a heel, to be compelling. Great microphone guy, could make anybody look good. Incorporated a lot of things. Nobody was making creating their own sound effects like he was. And he had that way, like somebody would be in the corner and throwing punches, and Lawler would be smacking the guy in the oblique. And in the days before VCR, like nobody caught on to that stuff. It just gave an, now, bam, it's become a running joke about the slap to the thigh. But nobody was doing that stuff. And Lawler had a lot of different ways of creating realism, and through what to this day might be one of the best punches ever in the history of the business.
Well, depending on who you ask, I've heard a lot of people say his punches look so great because they were real.
He can zing him in a little bit, but to this day he still throws a good punch. I believe the stiffness of the punch varied with who the opponents were.
Sure.
Yeah. But I would still put him up there with one of the great punches. He had the jabs. Like you watch a highlight video of the stuff he did with Dundee. There's one done to the Rocky theme, and it just looks different than what anybody's doing these days. It was, if you have a chance to check that out, Dundee, Lawler, Rocky theme. But he had great matches with just about everybody who went through that territory, and he was working Mid-South Coliseum every single Monday night, so you had to change it up. You had to find a way to stay fresh despite being in the same territory for years at a time.
Was that a challenge for you to be in front of the same crowd every week over and over and over?
Yeah, it was, but it was a great challenge because, like I said, you had to find a way to mix it up, keep things fresh, and you were making a lot of mistakes, which is a necessary part of learning. And I'm so fortunate that I had a chance to make those mistakes on the smaller stage so that when I did get my big break, I was kind of ready. Yeah, I was ready.
So I am curious, did you get much interview time? Do you get to hone in some of those moments with Lance Russell? What was that like?
I did not. Originally, Robert had told me, Jacko, I don't know if you're going to be able to talk, because I had a tell on a few of the words that revealed me to not be of New Mexican heritage, right? Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, but there were certain words I said like ball and mall that still sounded Long Island. Now, Vince Russo and I grew up 10 minutes away from each other. He sounds like he just got off the train from Brooklyn, right, bro?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I didn't have that type of dialect, but there were still a couple of words that were giveaways, and so I was kind of forbidden to talk. But fortunately, I was on and this is an example I gave to Becky Lynch before she became the man, and she was really debating in her head, whether she should stay, go, leave wrestling, or whatever. And I told her the story about how I was not supposed to talk, but yet I was constantly thinking of things to say. So I was lucky that Gorgeous Gary Young, my tag team partner, when we turned babyface in Memphis, he was a good talker, but on this occasion he was not delivering a good promo, and he referred to Fuller and Golden as being backwoods Tennessee Hicks, and I'm thinking to myself, these people in the audience are backwoods Tennessee Hicks, right? No offense, and that was me 34 years ago thinking that, and then Lance goes, "What do you think about that, Jack?" And I was like, on one hand, I know I am forbidden from talking, but I was just handed the microphone, or not handed, but microphone placed in front of me by Lance Russell. And I delivered a pretty good promo. And on the way back to the dressing room, Gorgeous Gary goes, "Well, I guess that's it for you not talking." So I did get some interviews in, and they were pretty good interviews. But I think the most valuable part of my interview experience was watching Robert Fuller deliver on a weekly basis and come up with something different for every single interview.
So we mentioned Lance. I mean, he was the icon of that area. I mean, just such a beloved figure, like Mean Gene in the WWF, or David Crockett, or Tony Schiavone, in JCP. Any memories of Lance? I mean, what a gentleman.
First of all, great announcer, that's a given, but a super nice man, and it felt surreal to me to be by the time I got there, I'd done some studying of Brian's tapes, so I was aware of Lance's work. And so when I was in the ring for that first match with Surfer Ray Odyssey, I could hear Lance calling the match, and it just felt surreal to me. I can't remember if I've been in that type of experience since. Maybe when I did the spot on the NWA show, you could hear the announcer talking, but that was really different for me.
And then, of course, you did have a babyface turn in Memphis.
Yeah.
Is that the first time you had?
It was my first time as a babyface. Well, I think in Ecuador I wore a mask in 1986 and wrestled as a babyface. Maybe it was 87. But I was almost all of my matches were as a heel. So we got jumped by the stud stable because Gary and I won the CWA tag team belts, and Jimmy and Robert wanted us just to hand over the belts so that they could take on the Samoan SWAT team. And then Gary goes, "Oh, hold on, Robert. Jack and I won the belts." "Oh, yeah, I was going to talk to you about that later." And then he started talking about having the belts again, the championship titles, in case
somebody's watching.
Somebody's watching, yeah. We still call them belts. And that led to us being jumped by the stud stable, and there was a puddle of blood, It was all, I remember Meltzer writing up saying this all came across much better than you would imagine. And I had blood to the point where when we had to go back out with the Spirit of 76, Gary Young was like playing patty cake with the blood on my chest and tapping it on his bandages. And we came out and we cleaned house, and we were pretty fiery baby faces for about 6 weeks before we lost that loser leave town match.
Is that when you wound up leaving the territory?
Yeah, sure was. So Yeah. We, even though you would generally do the same match, like you would win the titles, not just in Memphis, you would win them in every city you were in. So there's a story I told about being reprimanded for talking to a young lady in a wheelchair who had muscular dystrophy, and I was threatened with my job for exposing kayfabe by talking and being nice to someone in a wheelchair. And secretly, the DePriest family, they would let me stay over there on Wednesday nights. I had Thanksgiving dinner with them, and I remember saying to the young lady, Terry, "Hey, I bet you were surprised when Gary and I won those tag belts tonight." And she goes, "Not really. I heard you won them in every other city, too." And I was thinking, there's so much for kayfabe, right? But in the days before the internet, yeah, you would drive down the road 150 miles and win the same tag team belts you won the night before.
So, of course, we know you've got a lot more history than just the Memphis territory here in Tennessee. That infamous Chamber of Horrors in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We electrocuted Abdullah the Butcher.
We did. Sure did. Damn sure did.
So I guess he died, but it didn't last very long.
He came back.
Yeah, immediately. Beat up some medics. Maybe there were zombies. I don't recall. It's a little weird that show featured that spectacle as the first match on the show. And I understand from a production standpoint that's necessary. But it's always been odd to me, Mick, that we're going to electrocute a dude in the very first match. But match 2, let's do some arm drags.
Yeah. I think they had to get the match out of the way because of the enormity of the structure. Whenever I'm asked about Chamber of Horrors, I say, there's a reason why there was never a Chamber of Horrors 2. But if you look at especially the heels in that match, it was
unbelievable.
It was an all-star team. I think every member of that team is in the WWE Hall of Fame, right? It was Scott Hall.
Yep.
It was me. It was Leon White, and there was another. Can't remember the fourth guy.
It's an all-star crew, though.
All-star crew. Sting was one of the baby faces. Yeah, and Nick Patrick had the referee cam.
The referee.
The referee. Yeah, so that was pretty. That was cutting edge at the time. It didn't feel like it sucked until the switch fell down. That was where I had to climb up that structure, pretend I didn't see that the switch had already fallen down, put it back up into place, pretend I didn't see Rick Steiner reverse the suplex so that Abdullah was sitting in the electric chair, and then pull it down. And he did a certifiable job of looking like he was cooking, right? It was...
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was an okay visual, but it's weird that he still left on his own power, and it was the first match.
Well, the Druids were carrying him out, and then he came back to life.
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah, I will tell you, the only people who should be doing Druids, WWE, right? They do Druids well.
Okay, we got a little Druid controversy here today. So the Mankind character, I think, actually debuted in Memphis before it ever made WWE TV too, right?
That's true.
So kind of full circle for you there.
Yeah, and that was the first time I worked with Lawler. So I was the main event there in Memphis. From time to time, they would just have like a mystery opponent. I remember Brian Christopher talking about who was coming in next week. And he was cutting a promo, and he was trying to build it up. And he was like, he's a big guy, and he's got a drill. And he was announcing Isaac Yankem, and the crowd went mild, right? It's like this. But you were getting some WWE retreads, and you were getting like your first look at somebody who would go there to try to get some experience for a new character. And I remember working with Lawler. I worked in the studio, and then that night I went and teamed up with Brian Christopher. I can't remember who we faced. And it was while I was there in the ring and outside the ring that I started to kind of get a feel for what this character should be. And I think Lawler and I had a pretty good match, but a fairly short match on Monday night. But it was my first 3 matches as Mankind, 2 in Memphis and 1 right here in Nashville, Tennessee.
Guys, we got to pause right now. Need to take a time out, and I'm really excited to talk about this one because, buddy, I love me some Game Time. Game Time was a life changer for me and my friends WrestleMania weekend. I got blown up WrestleMania with a lot of people saying, hey man, you know where I can get tickets? Game Time. Game Time makes getting tickets easy, even at the last minute. You can even get tickets the same day. That's right. The same day as the event, you can still do it. My two favorite things about the Game Time app, though, is the best price guarantee. Think about that. Who else offers you this? The Game Time guarantee means you get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and same row for less money, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That's real peace of mind. I also want to mention they've got tickets for everything, not just wrestling, but football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever. And you don't have to plan months in advance. Do it the day of the event, they still got you. My second favorite thing, though, about the Game Time app, they give you a seat view. A lot of times you just look at one of those stadium keys or whatever, and you see, okay, it's section 213, but is that a good seat? Game Time on the app will let you see what it's going to look like from your seat. Come on now, eliminate the guesswork. It's no risk. I love it. I think you'll love it. By the way, they couldn't make it any easier. You can tap twice and bam, you're all set. Your tickets will be sent directly to your phone. You don't even have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code FOLEY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code FOLEY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now, let's get back to Mick at Starcast 5.
That might be a record for you for the longest it's taken to get to
It's taken a while,
G5.
right?
I'm really proud of you.
I'm out of practice. I haven't pandered in a while. I actually had people who'd come back to me and apologize for using that line. I remember Big E apologizing to me, and I'm like, I'm not the first guy to pander, and I won't be the last. And actually, my pandering was just like a nod and a wink to the great 80s baby faces who had pandered before me. So it wasn't here in Nashville, right here in Nashville, Tennessee. The cheap pop.
Well, right here in Nashville, Tennessee, we're going to let you guys ask Mick some questions. So we're going to have a guy helping out. And if you see him, throw your hands up. Let him know you've got a question for Mick, and we will make our way over to you. I do want to ask, though, Mick, you had your last man standing match in Tennessee against The Rock.
Yep.
And, of course, there you go. Everybody loves that feud.
He needs it. He needs it.
He's struggling. He's
struggling.
got the tequila thing, and he's trying real hard, man.
He's trying everything. He's dabbling in motion pictures, tequila, just hoping something sticks. And
Some
I hope
sort of
it does.
energy drink.
Yeah.
He's trying a football league. I don't know if any of this is going to really work out.
So thank you for supporting
somebody,
Dwayne.
Big fan of that obscure reference. The last man standing match, though. What do you remember of that right here in Tennessee?
Well, I remember that we kind of copied the Rocky II finish, which was actually copying a finish done in another boxing movie starring Jimmy J.J. Walker, who we now see on those
AARP commercials.
Yeah. As he was Bootney Farnsworth, and there was a double knockout there, too. So it's not me ripping off Rocky II. It's me ripping off Rocky II, ripping off Bootney Farnsworth. Dynamite. Yeah. But it was a good match. I believe the very next night I lost in a I can't remember the match I lost, or maybe what was it? The ladder match that cost me my shot at the at WrestleMania. It was originally going to be a three-way, me, Rock, and Steve. Someone got in someone's ear and said it needed to be a singles match. That no one would ever accept a three-way match at WrestleMania.
Until a few years later,
when that same person was in a three-way match in the main event at WrestleMania.
Did you ever talk to Sean about that at all?
I'm not sure. But that was back before Sean had his transformation into Good Sean.
Different guy.
Yeah, and he was actually trying to pitch me and Steve in the main event.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so the powers that be went with half of his idea, which was we will make it a singles match, but it's going to be Rock and Austin, which was,
it worked out. I guess.
Yeah, it worked out okay. And I was the guest referee in that match, and it was just incredible. I'd like to say that the loudest pop that I've ever been part of was when I won the title from that same young man who's struggling at this time, Dwayne Johnson. But actually, the biggest pop I've ever been a part of was the referee of that match with Austin and Rock in Philadelphia. It was crazy. Like, you could barely hear yourself speak or think. It was just crazy. So that was a good call. But we would have had a heck of a three-way match if we'd been given the chance.
Who do you think you had better matches with, Rock or Austin?
Oh, man, that's tough to say. As I think I had more with Rock. I had a longer program with Rock, but it was difficult to gauge how good your matches with Steve actually were, because the crowd, and I'm going to borrow a phrase from the late, great Pat Patterson here, the crowd was going banana, singular, on everything you did. Everything Steve was a part of yielded a response bigger than anything I'd ever dreamed about. So I'd have to go back and watch them to see if they were as good as they felt. But they sure felt magical while I was doing them. Even the old matches where it was a brown-shirted Mankind against Steve, and he was kind of a heel. We had a heck of a TV match that was just a lot of give and take. Steve wasn't big on working stuff out ahead of time. Of course, you get into a groove where you might repeat some of the same things. But if you went out there for a TV match, chances are you'd just have an idea, and then you would fill in all the blanks as you went. And there was something really special about creating in those matches. But I loved working with both guys, so I don't want to pick a favorite.
Oh, we got some questions lined up here. Let's do it. Here we go.
All right, we have Chad here.
Hey, Mick.
Hello.
You and Bret Hart kind of briefly crossed paths in the WWF. I know you had a match on Shotgun Saturday night. If things hadn't gone down the way they did for Bret, how do you think he would have fit into the Attitude Era? And do you think you and him would have crossed paths, a lot more?
Oh, I would like to think so. Bret's a really good friend. And he and I bonded instantly because we were both Civil War enthusiasts.
Wow.
Yeah. Not many people do that. So Bret gave me like a historical novel. That was a pretty big gift to receive from Bret Hitman Hart. First couple weeks in the territory. And the other thing we had was that Al Snow was making fun of me for listening to Leonard Cohen in the car on the way to Vancouver for the match I had July 96 with Henry O. Godwin. And Bret heard that someone was criticizing me for my Leonard Cohen fandom. And Bret came in with a notebook, opened it up, and quoted a Leonard Cohen song. Al Snow never badmouthed Leonard Cohen again. It was like a hush came over the room. It was like, oh, I get it. We don't badmouth Leonard Cohen in this dressing room. So Bret and I, we had the Shotgun Saturday night match. I remember saying to Bret, this is kind of like, it's supposed to be an edgy, show. I use the term raw because Raw originally was supposed to name that because it was supposed to have that edgy feel. And I said, Bret, I don't think we should discuss anything. I think we should just go out there, and if we make mistakes, we make mistakes. And I think we had a good match. And then I had another singles match with Bret in either Birmingham or I think it was Birmingham, UK. One of the best house show matches I've ever had. But I think the only time we wrestled on TV was as part of the when he was the Canadian, the faction. The Hart Foundation turned heel. So I would have loved to have worked with Bret more. I think they would have been really good matches. And you have to believe that someone as great as Bret would have found a way to stay relevant in the Attitude Era, because he was certainly everything he did was the best it could be. So I have no doubt Bret would have been a major force if he had stayed in WWE. You got it.
We got another question here.
All right, we got Adrian over here.
Hello, I'm a big fan. I have one question. How hard was it to climb back up the steel cage after being thrown off by The Undertaker?
I couldn't quite hear that question.
How hard was it to climb back up the steel cage after being thrown off by The Undertaker?
It was pretty difficult to climb up that steel cage, that cell structure. I had difficulty climbing it to begin with. Like I didn't go up there like I had assured Mr. McMahon that I had gone up, because I could barely climb it. There's a reason why every subsequent cell match has had those convenient footholds.
Cut in there.
I could barely climb it. I mean, I got up to the top. I was lucky in a sense because 2 of my fingers were completely numb from the mesh and having to exert so much weight. You saw Undertaker scale it, with quite a bit more ease than I did. Like, I maxed out as an athlete with 4 pull-ups in 6th grade gym class, and that's before I got bottom heavy, so that was not my strength. So imagine it was even more difficult to do it, and I'm going to explain how I did it. Are you listening?
Yeah.
There's a secret, and I'm going to reveal the secret to all of you. I was able to do it because I'm Mick fucking Foley.
Yeah!
Thank you!
All right!
Thank you! It's my one F-bomb for the day.
I love it. We're promised one every show. We got it, and I think we've got another question.
That's right. We have Nick right here.
Mick, first of all, I just want to thank you for everything that you've done, what you've put yourself through, every single person. You're our Evel Knievel in the wrestling industry, so I know everybody here appreciates that. My question is, 26 years ago, SummerSlam in Cleveland, you had a match I'm not sure has been replicated, the Boiler Room Brawl with The Undertaker. What's it like setting up, calling a match like that that's so completely different than being in the ring? I mean, you had the empty arena with The Rock, which is another, very different type of match. But how do you lay something like that out versus, just being able to call it in the ring?
Well, you wouldn't. The only thing I laid out were a bunch of obstacles that would make as much noise as possible. So I was just finding stuff like metal bars and leaning them up against things. Like everything about that. Richie Posner was known as the Magic Man. And he came up to me and he said, I'd just like if you need any, he didn't call them gimmicks. He had another word for it. And I said, look, don't take this personally. I know I haven't been here long, but if I do something, it's got to be real. And then I ended up with enormous back pain for months because of that. Undertaker got a staph infection from the fluorescent light bulbs that I threw him through. And so 3 years later, when I had my second Boiler Room Brawl match with the Big Show, I went up to Richie a week ahead of time. I said, I need as many gimmicks as you can come up with. I wasn't so difficult to please. So it was different. It was different, but I enjoyed it. I did not know that Mr. McMahon would think so highly of it that he didn't think it should have commentary. And so I just thought, wow, 17 minutes is a long time to go with the announcers barely saying a word. So I think I considered that to be my unloved stepchild. So I thank you for appreciating it. What was really difficult was trying to get that same feeling the next night when we went live, because everything in the Boiler Room was taped the night before, and from the moment the Boiler Room door opened, we were live on SummerSlam. So it was difficult to get my head into feeling like we just had that monumental struggle in the Boiler Room. And then we still had to do a bunch of things, including me dumping hot coffee on The Undertaker. To this day, I'm not sure if it was scalding hot coffee or just looked like scalding hot coffee. Do you remember? Anyone remember that spot?
I do remember that spot.
It was like steaming, yeah. And I was thinking, I hope that wasn't real, but it looked like hot coffee.
But even when you did it, you don't remember being sure now?
I don't remember being sure. I remember feeling kind of bad about it, hoping that it was somehow magically gimmicked so that steam would come out of it. But to this day, I don't know.
And he remembered, and 2 years later, he threw your ass off the cell. I think we got another question here.
That's right. We got Brad up next.
Hey, Mick. Love the podcast and love the attention you guys are giving to your 96, 97 era.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed that original Mankind character. And I know you've talked about when you were brought in, the original character had a fictional backstory, someone who's kind of heavily under the thumb of his mother, potential abuse, forced to play the piano, and that within a year that was kind of disregarded, in favor of your real story. I was wondering first what you thought about the character and if there were talks about developing that original character further.
Yeah, I remember when Mr. McMahon showed me a artist's rendering of what that character would look like. Creative Services, yeah. The same people who gave us Baron Von Ruthless and Chili McFreeze came up with Headcase and a few other names. I was not sold on the idea to the point where I had maybe a 2-hour conversation with Jim Ross. I was ready to say no, and it was really my wife who made me think that this was something that I could do. That, I was one of those guys who felt like I was the character of Cactus Jack, and she was like, "You're capable of more." And so I really started trying to wrap my head around it. I was still completing my last few tours of Japan. And I guess I was thinking nonstop about the character. I came up with the idea that it seems crazy now. He was a pianist of some note, and he actually took a hammer to all his fingers, except 2. That was the origin of the mandible claw. So I intentionally derailed my own concert pianist days. So that was kind of a crazy thing that fortunately got lost by the wayside. But I was lucky in that I was able to create the character as I was going. There's an original promo shot against a green background where it's clear that I didn't know what the character was. I'm kind of like grabbing the mask and looking kind of cross-eyed. So it started coming with time. And I was given the freedom to create, even given the freedom to come up with the name. We've all heard the story, but the conversation with Vince where he goes, "Have you heard your name?" And I told him I had not, even though I had. It was Mason the Mutilator. And I thought, all due respect to the rottenness of Baron Von Ruthless and Chili McFreeze, but that's up there. Mason the Mutilator, DOA, right? Dead on arrival. I don't care how good everything else was. And I heard him out, and I said, he said, "In this business, we've had crushers. We've had destroyers. We've had executioners. But we've never had a mutilator." Mutilator. And that's what you are. And then he tagged that first name Mason, asked me what I thought. I said, "I like it. I like it a lot. But what if?" And then I gave him the name Mankind, and the rest is history.
I love it. I love it.
All right.
I think Mankind is maybe my favorite version of the Three Faces of Foley. I just thought it was such a layered character, so nuanced. Even the different entrance music and exit music, you had some really cool stuff with Mankind.
It was really cool. And then, there's pretty dramatic change. The babyface Mankind was a really warm and happy character who could go to that dark place when he needed to. It was quite a transformation from the original dark character. And I enjoyed both of them, but I went with the lightness out of necessity, because it just felt like, wow, everyone's doing catchphrases, and that's working really well for them. And also, a lot of the roster saw what Steve Austin was doing and was trying to emulate it. And I just thought, brother, the market is wide open for a kinder, gentler type of babyface. And that was what Mankind became. He was kind of snuggly, right? Yeah. And he wasn't snuggly when he debuted at all.
No, not at all.
My snuggleness ratio went up markedly over those 2 years.
We got another one here.
Yep, we got Rowan up next.
Hey, Mick. Obviously, everybody knows that Dude Love was your brainchild from your handheld backyard days. How did it come about to getting that character onto TV from the backyard?
Well, this goes to what we're talking about in an upcoming episode.
Absolutely.
Upcoming episode of Foley Is Pod, where I was having some really good matches with Shawn Michaels on the house show loop while Shawn was injured. and he really appreciated the lengths I went to take care of him. So we were still able to have really good matches. Maybe not as great as he was used to having, but he wasn't taking a single bump, and he appreciated that. He sold so well for my rudimentary offense that we had people eating out of the palm of our hands. And afterwards, he said, "Don't take this the wrong way, but is this how you always envisioned yourself?" Because the mankind, we're talking about the dark mankind. And I laughed. I said, no, actually, I wanted to be you. And he got a look of puzzlement. I said, "I'm not talking about Shawn Michaels." And then I laid out this Dude Love character I created. Bruce Prichard overheard the conversation, went to Mr. McMahon, said, "Mick Foley has a way more interesting backstory than this fictional portrait you guys created. And he's got video to prove it." And so Vince decided to make that dream come true. And that was where the idea for bringing I talked about Dude Love in those sit-down interview with JR that really changed the focus of my career. And he decided to bring it to life for the WWE fans.
We got another one here?
Yes, we got Robbie up next.
Mick, thank you. I'm a native Nashvilleian, so thanks for sharing all that Memphis and fairgrounds, that sort of thing. Tell me, the biggest bump you took that took you recovering. And I know you can talk about the chair shots from Rock. You can talk about being thrown off the cage, Vader. But what's that biggest bump that you took that, man, it reeled you?
The biggest bump that I took, like an unknown bump that people don't recall that well.
What was the most painful? And then what's the most painful unknown one that nobody really talks about?
Well, the Nestea plunge was just pure.
The worst.
Yeah, it was the worst. You felt. I've been in a bad car accident, and it felt like I was in a car accident. But I got paid $25 for that car accident in Memphis. Yeah. It was just crazy painful and really dangerous. I mean, that same bump sidelined Antonio Inoki for a year, I think. Hogan hit him with an elbow, and Inoki went backwards and was out for a year. So there was a lot of pain involved in that. I would say the one no one ever talks about was one of the matches with Undertaker, where I went for a pile driver. He didn't backdrop me, but he had me hanging upside down on his back, and then he ran back first as fast as you can with a 280-pound guy on your back. And it didn't come across as well as I wanted it to, but you could tell that it was painful by virtue of the fact that I had the Undertaker's ass print on the side of my face for about 3 days. Yeah, but that was one, you try things out. I never rehearsed anything. I just tried them out for the first time, and that was one and done, but that was a pretty good one that nobody ever talks about.
Got another one here?
That's right. We got Mike up next.
Hi, Mick. Hi, Conrad. Thanks for everything, Mick. Huge fan. Just want to know, you share your experiences with some of the wars you had with Vader and WCW, including like the powerbomb on the floor, the Excedrin headache number 9 story, and just some of those hard-hitting battles that were really memorable from the WCW years. I was a big fan of that era and big fan of your work, and your matches were stiff as hell, and they were amazing. And I was wondering if you share some insights on those. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I didn't get all of that. I know you're talking about the Vader matches. Was there a question there?
Like in your book, you mentioned like you had the power bomb that on the floor, and then a year later, I think it was, he power bombed you again, and then they said, I think it was Bobby Heenan said Excedrin headache number 9, and you were like,
look, Bobby's not here, and he was such a great performer. I don't want to belittle Bobby in any way. But I was hoping for the fact that it was a year. It just seemed like a great story that I'm going to lose that match, but I am going to get up from that same bump that put me out, and it resulted in the Lost in Cleveland episode. So if you guys want to do some researching, Lost in Cleveland, it's a classic.
With some cameos in there.
Yeah.
A few cameos in there.
Yeah. But that match with Leon at Disney MGM, now it's called Disney Hollywood Studios, that was a really good match, and I just didn't think, there was a case where my idea of what could be done with that move was not reflected in the final product. So I was disappointed, but things worked out okay for me in the end.
Mick, were there any bumps that you always wanted to take that you didn't? Like you had an idea creatively, like we've seen, Lawler get run over by a car in Memphis and some of the craziness. Was there anything that ever crossed your mind?
First of all, I don't think he was expecting Eddie to hit the accelerator like he did,
Probably
right?
not. Maybe it was over a payoff. You never know.
An incredible bump that Lawler took when Eddie Gilbert ran him over in the parking lot. I always wanted to drop an elbow off the TV truck. I really did. Because I was always thinking visually, I was like, you can get a great...
Into a crash pad, right?
No, onto the top of a car, because two things working for it. Jackie Crockett was the first guy in WCW to actually shake the camera when I dropped the elbow. It was in World Class Championship Wrestling that I talked to Video Bob Von Gursky about getting a low-angle camera shot because they were shooting it over the shoulder, so the depth perception was off, and like the impact of the move was not as well reflected with a high camera shot. And so when I got to WCW, Jackie Crockett started shaking the camera, and it looked like I was flying into people's living rooms. So I thought, this is just a great chance. I would almost always hear Jim Ross's call in my head. So I thought it was a thing where there's like a double arm DDT on the roof of the car. My own move sends me sprawling off the car, leaving my opponent on the hood of the car. And JR was like, where is he? Where is he? And then, he's on top of the truck, And then I was going to come off with the elbow of all elbows, and it would be aided by the fact that, you could put like maybe a special type of shock absorber that would make the landing less harsh. No way you're going to eliminate the harshness. But the main appeal to me was that you could get that low camera shot, so it would look like I was sailing like into your living room in a really impactful way. I never got to do that. I remember Jerry Briscoe asking me what I could do that would look good because I was coming out and attacking the Undertaker. I said I can drop an elbow off the TV truck, and he goes, "We are aware that you do some unusual things. There may come a time when we ask you to do that, but we ask that you not do it until we ask you." And that probably added a year or two to my career. But I always wanted to come off a TV truck onto an automobile.
Okay, that's pretty crazy. We got time for one more question.
Nashville Municipal Auditorium. Is there a TV truck?
There are two TV trucks.
TV trucks, all right.
And I'm sure there's a beater car around here, hypothetically.
One more bump.
Oh, well, you know what? Let me just put you on the spot, since you're advocating for this. What do y'all think about maybe, hypothetically, one day, Mick Foley's last match?
There's a little-known fact. My last actual match was against Rick.
It was?
In TNA. You can count. The only other thing I did in ring after that was Royal Rumble 2012, and I did the thing where I came down against the League of Nations at WrestleMania 2016, which really wasn't. It's not really a match if your opponents are forbidden from even touching you, right? I'm on the no-touch list. This is my remembrance, and forgive me if you've heard this story. I'd lost 50 big ones, right? Clearly put them all back on. I found those 50 big ones, but I lost 50 and then some. But I was down to 288 from 338. I was feeling pretty good, but I hadn't been in the ring in years. And Sheamus comes up to me and he goes, "I want you to hit me as hard as you can." I said, "I think I can make it look good without doing that." And he looked at me and goes, "As hard as you can, fella. As hard as you can." So I hit that hard-headed SOB about 25 times to the point where I actually thought they sped up the tape because I didn't think I could move that fast. And to this day, I can still point to the spot on my forearm that is sore from hitting him 6 years ago, and he was fine a minute later. So, Rick and I had a really good match with a lot of intensity, and that was a great final match for me. Yeah, I don't count the part where I almost lit Frank the Clown's testicles on fire as a match. That was billed as a confrontation. So, yeah.
Is that guy always going to be a thorn in your side?
Probably, yeah.
We got time for one more here.
All right, we got Dom up next.
Hi, Mick. So Conrad did just touch on what I was going to ask. So hypothetically, if you were to have, maybe at Starcast 6, Mick Foley's last match, which of the three faces of Foley would you most like to wrestle as?
Well, remember, I was supposed to do the match with John Moxley for SummerSlam 2012, and then I failed my impact test, you know, and so it was all that was all she wrote for me. And in that match, that was one of the things I wanted to do. My first night in Memphis, I saw something that stood out to me I'll never forget. It was Jimmy Boogie Woogie Man Valiant was making his return to the Mid-South Coliseum, and he came out dancing on stage, but it was actually a guy, last name of Baxter, dressed up as Boogie Woogie Man, and then Jimmy hit the ring from the crowd, and I thought, that's good. Like, I'd like to put my own twist on that. And so I was thinking that part of the allure of that SummerSlam match was we would not announce which face of Foley it was, and that it was actually going to be Dude Love coming out first, but it was going to be the faux Dude Love. And then Mankind would surface. And I was even going to ask for permission from The Undertaker to come up from underneath the ring for that match. Like, I had that match in my head to the point where noted neurologist Dr. Robert Cantu told me the gig was up. I looked at him and I said, I can work an entire match around my left knee. Like, that's still that wrestler in me. Like, I've got one more match. And he said, Mr. Foley, when I met you a couple weeks ago, you struck me as a bright young man. He used the word young. He said, I've been doing a little research. You've got a lot going for you. If you want to find another neurologist to clear you, that's your business. But I'm telling you, you should never wrestle again. And, man, it was kind of, it made it easier to have the bat taken out of my hand. First thing I did was call Edge because he'd had that same situation. Now, he came back, but he's got grit. And he's in much better shape than I am. But yeah, that was it for me. So no, I'm good with the way things ended. I get almost as big of a rush from, like, you've seen how, you know, jubilant I am after we do the podcast in the studio, and when I do the one-man show, I get a lot of the things I loved about being in the ring. I still get on a very regular basis, and I would say years before I made it into the WWE Hall of Fame, the response I received from the fans and, you know, and even the modern day WWE guys made me feel like I was in the Hall of Fame years before I was. So I thank all of you for that, and all of my colleagues who put me up and made me feel like I was a big deal, still a big deal.
Because you are a big deal.
Thank you.
Well, Mick, I want to thank you personally for coming and supporting our crazy idea here of Starcast, doing yet another stage show with us. And I heard earlier today you were asking for comps. Are you going to be at Ric Flair's last match tonight?
I will be at Ric Flair's last match. Yeah.
Boys and girls, that's going to do it for us. Thank you for tuning in to Starcast. Thank you for checking out Foley Is Pod. And I think this is not a plug. This is just information purposes only. You do a thing where you wish people happy birthday and things like that.
Oh, yeah, my cameos, yeah. I was proud to be the #1 requested wrestler or athlete on all of Cameo. There's 7,500 athletes, and I was the #1 requested, and we believe it's because I just try harder, and I clearly enjoy it more than just about anybody. So if you are looking for a unique gift, you can request Dude Love, Cactus Jack, or Man in a Mankind mask, because I don't own the copyright to that name. So he is not Mankind, he's Man in a Mankind mask. And I love doing them, and they're great for birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas, and I have been known to break out in song from time to time.
It's a whole performance. Check it out, and don't forget to subscribe to Foley Is Pod. Mick, thank you so much. Put it together for Mick Foley.
Conrad, one more plug. Hold on, just standing ovation is appreciated, but a little premature.
You've never been premature, have you?
Maybe. Anyway, we don't want to talk that way, right? Nobody thinks of me that way.
Oh, you did a run in early.
Yeah, I did a run in early. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I'm doing my signing next door, so I'm doing that from 10:30 to when.
So the line is finished.
Till the line's finished.
Around the block.
Yeah.
But the
So
party's over right here in Nashville.
right here in Nashville, Tennessee. Thanks, everybody. I'm really impressed with the turnout this early in the morning, and I want to thank Conrad again for putting that in that prime 9 a.m. spot. Thank you, Conrad, and thanks to all of you for coming out this early in the morning. Have a nice day.
Hey guys, Eric Bischoff here, and just want to call a quick timeout. I want to tell your listeners about what I've been telling everybody at Over at 83 Weeks for quite a while now, about all the cool things that are happening over at adfreeshows.com.
He created the soundtrack for generations of WWE fans with some of the most iconic themes in history. Legendary composer Jim Johnston sits down with Conrad to take us behind the themes that we all grew up on, including Randy Orton's Voices.
Got your rules and your religion, all designed to keep you safe. But when rules start getting broken, you start questioning. They tell me things that I will do. They show me things I'll do to you. They talk to me.
You know, I wanted it to be a little bit creepy.
Right.
That's what it felt like to me. It was dark, mysterious, creepy.
That's just a small taste of what we've got waiting for you with 4 levels to choose from. See for yourself why ad-free shows is the best value in wrestling today. Sign up now at adfreeshows.com.